Everyone, never else has a forum. Can we make it a part of what time we get it up? So good to see everybody this morning, the presenters and others that are here, of the board, committee. No mai haere mai rather than me do it, I'm happy to open the door for somebody else to do it. And want somebody to do our work here this morning.
Tēnā koe te tiamara, koutou hoki, me mō te kaunihere ngā Rotorua, tēnā hira koe moana, a koutou mā, ngā kaimahi hoki, me koutou hoki ngā me mō te hapori he wiwi mai nei tēnei rā, e karake koto mo tātou, tēnau tātou. He honore, he korore ki te atua, he maunga rongo ki ta mato ta whenua whakaro pai ki ngā tana whāma. Hange te atua he ngā kauhau ki roto ki tēnā ki tēnā o mātou. Whakatoi o tō wairua tapu hei a whina hei tohoto i a mātou whiti kāro, whiti kōrero. I runga te kaupapa mui a tātou tēnei rā. Kuhi praita ko tō mātou kaiwhakau. Āmen.
Āmen. E tani tēnā koe tuku nei ngā kupu tōru te wāhingaro. Tēnei te tautoko ake. Amatu me tuahi tuku i tētahi kōrero ko waki ki te rau ngā mate. I ai tuai te rori ngā rātata ko hipo ake. Te rau ngā kaimahi. Ka amatu koe a tērā ko ngaro atu te tirohanga kanoi. Tangi ki tōna whānau, ka tangi ki tōna iwi. Ka tangi ki a tātou. Tātou e au e nei ki tērā o ngā mate. Koe no waiho rata ki oki oki, anei tātou e hui nei tēnei rā. Tēnā koutou, kia ora tātou. Just appropriate this morning in light of our accident that happened out on the road to just pay respects to the family who lost their loved one, despite the circumstances. But just a poroaki to him and wish his family and his tribal nation, if he is Māori, well, and indeed his family, despite the circumstances, just pay respects to them. So we let them go, farewell them, and we come back to the living. So to all of us here today, tēnā koutou, greetings to you all. Thank you for our time, mate. I'll need to do a couple of formalities. As you all know, I remind members and staff that the public section of this meeting is being recorded, and that the recording will be made available on the Bay of Plenty Regional Council website following the meeting. I also remind all present that government decision-making calls no protection to members, council officers and the public for comments made during meetings that are subsequently challenged in law and determined to be slanderous. So, karakia koe tērā, tēnā tōko, any apologies?
Nikki Douglas.
Nikki Douglas.
People join on at 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock. So, are there any other apologies for the meeting? If not, can I call for the
Sorry, Chair. Apologies from us from Councillor Greg Brown, who's overseas.
Thank you, Councillor Greg Brown. I have enough go. Can I call for a mover and a seconder for our apologies? Seconder. Thank you. We'll just note that Nikki will be attending by him. Moving on our agenda, there are no public forum speakers. Items not on the agenda have an approach from Councillor Winters to talk to the oil spill. So we move through our business cleanly enough. We'll be able to get some time to be able to do that. It's obviously a matter of huge importance at the moment, so that'll be appropriate to do that, and we can have a discussion about that at that time. There's no changes to the order of business, I don't think, except one that was around. Where was that? I'm going to pull something.
Just talk about the dates of the next meeting.
Item. Yeah, okay. Declarations of conflict of interest, if there's any matters relating to that around the items of the agenda, I'm asking members to pass those on. And then we move on now to the Ngātake Tūmataiti, the Whakapuaki Tūmatanui, public excluded business to be transferred. There is no business to be transferred into the open. Now turn ourselves to the minutes of the meeting. Moved by Councillor Winters, second.
Sorry,
Second, have we had a mover and seconder of all the minutes of the last meeting? Any discussion? I don't think any discussion should be straightforward. They've been circulated. Matters have been picked up. All left by my aye. All those agree, say aye. But against, carried. We refer now, members, to the so the motion is that we confirm the Rotorua Lakes Tauranga Lakes Strategy Group meeting minutes, 30th of January, true and correct record. We have a mover, we have a second, it's been carried, we're moving on. Moving now to the reports. So we have about 30 minutes set aside for the Building Climate Resilience for Rotorua Rotorua and Rotorua communities, and I'll invite Phil and do what you need to do, and away you go.
It's my pleasure to present this report to you all. As you know, the strategy group asked me about a year and a half ago to form a committee to look into climate change resilience and possible recommendations for in Rotorua, given that they're unique in our lake systems, and that they both have communities around them, but neither have an overland exit. So there are no streams or rivers running out to help drain them. So when we have prolonged heavy rain events, they just keep filling up. And if you'll remember, in 2023, we had major flooding around the two lakes, and that was the impetus for the formation of this group and for us bringing a report back to you. So what I would like to do is I would just like to introduce our committee that we formed with this. Now what we did was we went out and worked with the community, and it's community driven. We looked for 2 representatives from each community, so 2 from Rotorua, 2 from Rotorua, and we also looked for 2 from the general population and 2 representatives from iwi, and I'm really pleased to be able to acknowledge Robin Skerritt and Andrew Smith here from Rotorua and Rotorua, who've been able to come along and join us today and see this presentation. At the same time, we reached out to Nick and Anna Sorrento, who's on screen, you can't see her at the moment, from the Bay of Plenty Climate Change Program, to see how they might be able to assist us. And what I'm going to do is Nick and Anna came along and presented to us, gave us what we thought was a really good basis to start our work on. So I'll just hand over to Nick to just go through what they presented.
I'm just going to take you through kind of the process briefly, and then we'll get into the recommendations. Just letting you know, we have a technical report recommendations. So you've got a summary report, and then this one will link with you. So the purpose of the work was to understand the key climate-related flood risks now into the future for Rotorua and their communities. And I recommend next steps back to this committee. So what we did was we followed national guidance around climate adaptation, which is colloquially called the MFE wheel. We adapted that for the process to really focus on 3 key questions: what's happening, really understanding what's happening, understanding what matters most to the community, and then what we do about it. And that looks like this in a cycle. So started with, I guess, the events that formed the formation of the group and this purpose. Then to understand really what's happening, we got together a bunch of agencies. We had a workshop with those agencies like the GNSs and the NZTAs and the councils and technical people to understand what was going on, but also getting that community feedback about what had happened in 2023, looked back to 1970, looked at comparing the flooding in the two big events. We also got some extra technical work done looking at the relationship between rainfall and sea levels rising. So we will put together what we called a really rich picture of what the heck was going on. And then in terms of what matters most, we put our picture together into a thing called a story map, which has got a link in your report, and it's also in here as well. This story map, I guess, showed the big picture, surveyed the community via that story map, got feedback from the local community about what was really, really important, and of course from the members of the group themselves. They were the foundation of that. So we've got a good understanding of what matters most and what, I guess, the threats were, and then we worked to kind of co-develop practical, actionable and achievable recommendations which are before you today in terms of what could possibly be done to build the resilience of the community. There we go. That's back to you, Phil.
Thank you. And look, we've put this in here because we just wanted to stress that we have not gone down the path of possible engineering solutions. This has come out of the cultural, social and environmental responses we got out of the community, both in 2023 and when we went back to them under that what matters most consultation with the community. And while there were suggestions and the possibility of draining the lakes or putting in overflow pipes and stuff like that, there were incredibly strong reactions against doing that within the communities. And obviously it would be a very difficult and expensive road to go down for regional council as well. So we decided that we weren't going to look into those issues, but what we were going to look at was practical and affordable recommendations that we felt were easily achievable, that we could bring back to both councils, with the aim of those councils starting to look at those recommendations over a period of time and slowly starting to introduce them into their long-term plans. We understand planning constraints, financial constraints. We're not expecting to hit both councils with huge bills from day one. There are bills to come, but what we're trying to do is to come up with practical, achievable responses for the community.
Excuse me, Phil, just Councillor Winters. The question is, can we do questions while we're doing it, or want to wait till the end?
Happy to do them during. Yeah.
Phil, that statement, we rejected engineering lake level control. So currently in Lake Rotorua, there's an overflow land pathway that's already in place so that when Rotorua fills up, and it nearly did last time, it flows over into Lake Rotorua. So is that saying we should be taking that overland flow pathway structure out?
No, what we did was we looked at that structure, and it doesn't come into play until Rotorua has actually started flowing overland already. So all it is doing is directing some of the flow that would happen anyway. And it's important to realise that even at the levels we got to last time, it did not start coming into play.
That's right.
Stage.
Are you saying we should take it out because currently there's a resource consent for that structure?
Look, the resource consent expires soon, is my understanding. We have just left that to the side because we felt it didn't have an impact on at what level Rotorua might overflow into Rotorua. Yeah, so I think that's where we are on that one. We're pretty neutral about it. We're aware of it, but we don't see it as an issue for us. Okay, so what we've done is we've broken our recommendations up into 3 areas: flood risk preparedness and early action, access and connectivity, and safe development and resilient infrastructure for the two lakes. So I'll go through these fairly quickly. And we start off with our preparedness and early actions. Okay, so the first one is to co-develop a community response plan. And this came out of 2023, where the community didn't really know what was happening. And it was the biggest issue for the community, that they felt there'd been no communications from either council over what was happening. So we're saying, working with emergency management and other organisations, that we should have a structure in place early on. If the lakes start rising, that we can go out there and we can tell the community, okay, we're aware of these actions. This is what we're putting in place for if the lakes continue to rise. And one of these things would actually, we've taken from the Nongataha floods, where after the event, navigators were put in place. So that someone that was experiencing issues due to the flooding, and one person contact between both councils. And we're saying that worked really well in that situation, and we should look at doing a similar thing here. And actually in 2023, I guess, Andy Brewer from Regional Council and I sort of fulfilled that role, because we were the people known out in the community, so people would reach out to us. Obviously, we think that should be a proper position rather than just linked to personalities in the community. So that was our first recommendation to bring back to you. Then we wanted to update and improve warning protocols. And one thing that happened last time, there is a warning level for Lakes Rotorua and Rotorua that they're in flood. However, in 2023, when we had these huge floods, we never actually reached those official flood record levels. So obviously we need to sort something out there. So what we're talking about here is actually to go back and look at this, to look at what levels are going to trigger a warning to the community that the lake might be in flood. And this year, we've seen an example of that, where we've already started interacting with both communities, as lake levels have risen to a level that have, I guess, rung silent alarm bells for us within councils, that we need to be paying attention to this. Next step is investigating the feasibility of temporary flood protection measures. Now, this may be that lakes are getting up. We get to a point where we're tipping around to the very edge of flooding. It may be that we then have a dry period and the lakes start to drop again. But it could be that we use some of the temporary measures that are available to help protect houses, and that might be the inflatable barriers that you can use, and you almost use for the oil slip type situation as well. So there are a number of tools out there that councils have, and it might be appropriate to use those at the beginning of a flooding situation where we're still not sure whether it's going to continue, the lake levels might continue to rise, or it might just be temporary. Another thing that came out of this was that, of course, we had an equally bad flood back in 1970, but all the information from then has pretty well been forgotten. And that's institutionally as well as out in the communities. So what we wanted to do was have visual markers out in the community so people could see that, hey, we have had floods here in the past and these are where they are. And I guess a prime example of this is the public boat ramp at Lake Rotorua at Merge, which is behind the petrol station and store there. If you go down there and have a look at the toilet block, which is by far the highest item around the area, and you look at it and you can see the watermark 300 mil up. That whole area was completely underwater. If you go down there and look now, you could never believe that the lake was that high. But we're just saying we need these markers around there to remind people that these things can happen. And then another thing we thought really important was to support the ongoing understanding of how the lakes work, the dynamics of the lakes. And once again, you know, we look towards a relationship between regional council and Waikato University, and we can see that there's scope there for academic research on how these lakes function. You know, there are urban myths about the lakes, about holes in the lake beds, and you know, how water might come and go from them and stuff like that. But we don't really have that detailed scientific knowledge. So we would like to see that continue to be explored, so we have a better understanding. Okay, from here we move on to access and connectivity. And the first item here, and we are starting to move into areas that are a little bit more expensive for communities, and we understand that, and we're not expecting these things to happen instantaneously, but we do see both councils needing to start planning for this. Now, the road into Lake Rotorua flooded, Pongakawa Valley Road flooded and was blocked for about 6 months in 2023, caused havoc for that community. Now, to build up the whole road would be incredibly expensive, and we understand that. But what we're saying is that there is one short section of that road that is deeper or lower than the rest. We would like to see that section lit up. And then for Lakes Council to have protocols designed that would allow them to manage the rest of the road when it is flooded, perhaps in a stop-go, almost Ford situation where cars are running through water this deep on that section of road. It's got stop-go lights. We put barriers, concrete barriers down the side of the roads, which is what we did in 2023, stop people running off. And then people can still access the community without having to travel through alternative routes, which were taking 2 to 3 hours, as opposed to half an hour to get to, say, Arawa, where people worked. So we see this as quite viable. We would like to see this happen. At the same time, I mentioned the alternative routes. We want to see those improved and strengthened. Ideally, we would like to see there's a section of Pongakawa Valley Road that goes, loops around behind Rotorua, turns around, comes back toward Lake Rotorua, comes out at near Oakeri Falls. There is a short section of that is still gravel. We would like to see that sealed if possible. The most difficult part of that road is that the responsibility for maintaining one side of it falls outside of Lakes Council, falls with Western Bay Council. For them, it's a road that goes nowhere. It doesn't service anyone in their area. We think it's absolutely vital to have an arrangement for both Regional Council and Lakes Council at the highest level to work and negotiate with Western Bay's Council that funding for that, their half of the road is covered, whether they pay for it and Lakes Council maintains it, could be one solution, but it really does need to be maintained. At the moment, that side, their side of the road is almost a complete washout. It's quite dangerous. So we need to see that improved. Ideally, we would like to see it sealed. Then we move on to safe development and resilience of infrastructure. And the first item up here
Sorry,
is...
may I ask a question? I just want to, sorry, I do have a few
Sorry, I
questions.
didn't see your hand up there, Tanya.
Yeah, so but I think I'll start with these one. Just in terms of the alternative routes and also raising Soda Springs Road, so recommendation 6 and 7. I do want to note though that those are multi-million-dollar investments that will be required for the raising Soda Springs Road, 1 to 2 million for alternative routes. I believe when we've looked into that, that's 3 to 5 million plus ongoing maintenance. So do just want to note that while the recommendations, that is an incredible amount of investment that will be required and potentially expected of the Rotorua Lakes Council, which we have, we don't currently have the ability for. So I just want to note that, yeah, that's has not been budgeted for or considered from Lakes Council yet.
Yeah, and look, we're definitely aware of that, and that's why I said right at the beginning, we're not expecting councils to implement all these recommendations immediately. We see these as things to be slowly worked into, especially something like that, to be worked into long-term plans. We're not saying in year 1 of a long-term plan, it might be year 10 of a long-term plan, but we do think councils need to be aware of doing this work. We also, purposely restricted the amount of the road we thought needed to be built up to being the shortest section possible, once again, to keep that cost down. Totally understand about the cost for the alternative route, and we're happy to keep working with staff at Lakes Council on these plans to come up with a solution that will work for council and for the community. But yes, we're absolutely aware of those high costs around these. And as I said, we're not expecting council to respond immediately but we do want that these are issues that will come up. And if climate change has an effect on high lake levels being more regular, they will come up on the level. Okay, so does that answer your question, Kane? Okay, so recommendation 8 is to restrict new development in flood zones. So one thing that happened after the 1970s was some houses were bought out and removed, and then this all got forgotten about, and new development was allowed in areas that are prone to flooding. So we don't want to see that happen again. So we're just saying that actually we need to be really careful about this and keep it in mind going forward. And this comes back to that institutional knowledge getting lost. We don't want to see that. Another thing that we've got here, and there is a cost to this, we want to have both councils work with property owners to see how they can enable or make it more straightforward for people to do alternatives to, shall we say, managed retreat, which is a terrifying word for a community, an incredibly expensive option to councils as well if they're having to buy out multi-million-dollar properties. In actual fact, we had a limited number of properties that flooded or were at risk of water coming into them. A number of them are on piles. What we would like to see is council working with those people to see if we can streamline the process for them to perhaps raise those properties another half metre by repiling, and then the water might flow over their section but won't come into their house. Likewise, we have some houses that are on concrete pads with timber studs down to the concrete pads. They could perhaps have the first half of those ground floor walls changed to be reinforced concrete block instead of studs, so that if water flowed into them, it's not actually destroying the structure of the house. So we just want both councils, work with property owners to try and streamline and make these activities easier. Then another thing that we saw, especially in Otago Bay at Lake Rotorua, was that although there was a limited number of houses that were flooded, a huge number of houses were affected by high groundwater, septic tanks not working and flooding on their properties from the high groundwater. So once again, if councils could work with property owners to help them understand how they could put drainage on their properties to improve the removal of that groundwater flow. So once again, this is to enable property owners to look after their property. We're not saying that council has to take on the costs of this. They actually assist the property owners to look after their own. This came out very strongly from the Rotorua community that we need to see reticulation scheme there finished, and this is expensive. You know, if we look at Rotorua paying the same amount as the people at East Rotoiti and Rotorua, there's still a shortfall of about $6 million, and we understand that. So once again, we're not saying, you know, day one, year one, it should be done. But once again, we see that planning is needed for them to complete the reticulation there. And 2023 provides the absolute reason for that. We had no concerns about Lake Rotorua flooding. We did have some properties there flood. We had a lot of sections there flood, but their sewage was working. You know, they were reticulated in their sealed systems. So we were totally comfortable with people staying in their houses there. With people on septic tanks at Rotorua, we were very concerned about the health of people with septic tanks stopping functioning. And a number of the properties that were flooded themselves went to great lengths to decommission their septic tanks to make sure that they weren't causing a health risk for the rest of their community. So, and we've had strong suggestions from the Rotorua community. They would like to see the reticulation completed.
Yeah, can we just say for about 5 minutes? Sorry, about 5 minutes.
Okay, and then our last recommendation is to assess the community infrastructure in flood zones. In 2023, we saw lots of actions, not just by council, but also by individual property owners to try and safeguard themselves and future-proof for the future. Some great initiatives out there. We want both councils to look at what people have been doing out there and to seeing how they can help and maybe improve those initiatives. There are, you know, I think we're probably all aware of Rice. They wrote it was underwater and manned a number of pumps, getting up every 2 hours to turn them on. Kept his house and about 4 neighbours out of the water by doing that. Looking at that system, it would be quite straightforward to automate it all. So we can look at doing those sorts of things to improve the infrastructure around it. And then the final thing, we just want to ensure the security of State Highway 30. This is an NZTA responsibility, but the levels we saw in 2023 and also, well, 1970, the road was underwater. NZTA built it up after that. They built it exactly to the height that the lake got to in 1970 and got to again in 2023. If it had got any higher, it would have overflowed the road. We do think that is as high as Rotorua will get, because then it starts overflowing overland into Rotorua. But still there's been quite a bit of erosion around the lake edge and undermining of State Highway 30. So there's always a need to remind NZTA of their responsibilities on our state highways. And then look, in a way, this is our most important recommendation. We would ask that this committee pass a resolution asking both councils, start from both councils, to come back to this committee in its first session of the new triennium, outlining how they will approach the possibility of implementing these recommendations. So what we don't want to happen is that this is a dead report. We present it to you, that it's forgotten. We want to continue to work with both councils, with staff in both councils, to see how we could possibly implement these recommendations and to look at timeframes and how we can help make these things feasible. The key areas for us, I think, are the road access to Rotorua, the sewage reticulation, the flood preparedness, and the resilience building. So that is making that community feel like we actually care and paying attention to them. And in actual fact, you know, from my experience of 2023, that's almost the most important thing, that the community feels that we actually care about. Thank you very much.
In order. Thank you very much for that overview and work that's been done. I might just take some questions, if any, and then obviously we can work with some of those motions that have been presented. Question, Doug?
Thanks, Chair. Firstly, could I acknowledge you, Phil, and your group for having done this work. I mean, it's not easy to do this, but yeah, well done. In terms of all the recommendations, there's a lot of work here for RLC. And at the end of the day, I go to your recommendation 8, which is essentially caveat emptor. So over periods of time, people get complacent. They build in places, doesn't matter whether it's Rotorua or it's the beachside, they get complacent and they do the stuff. And then when things go wrong, which we know there's a lot of history here, they expect someone to fix it. In terms of the timeline here, I mean, it's 50 years since the 70s one. There must be some people, even though they're getting aged, who had some history of what happened prior to the 70s, you know, say 15, 20, 30s. I don't know. That's the sort of question, but yeah, well done. I think a lot of it's caveat emptor. Recommendation 9, my question there, or I think a focus there should be on what is the role, if any, for insurance companies? So when we had the Edgecombe floods, homes that were written off, if you had to rebuild a new home on there, you had to meet the new building standards. Homes that just had to be repaired or inundated and be repaired, you can maintain them in the floor profile that they had, which is nuts, really. But the insurance company should have been saying, we will take this opportunity in terms of paying you out to give you funds to lift it above the threat level, so that if it happens again, you know, we're covered.
In terms of, I'll answer that one first, I think. In terms of the insurance, some insurance companies have already walked away from properties here, won't reinsure them. You know, we had the house that they did raise themselves. They paid for that. The insurance company was very happy for them to do it, but did not give them any money towards it. So, but, you know, we've had various responses there on insurance. The difficult one is the places that don't get their insurance carried on, and the people then decide whether they're going to continue to keep the house. I mean, they're sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place. It's hard to sell, and continue on. The thing that there was 50 years ago, we have found some people. So when we were doing a what is happening section right at the beginning, we did go out into the community and look for those people who remembered back to the 70s. We're mainly talking about people who were teenagers at the time now, but we have got some historical knowledge from then. I mean, I actually remember it. What I remember is driving through flooded roads, and even at Lake Rotorua, because that was before Lake Rotorua had the control gates. And so Rotorua had flooded as well, and State Highway 30 had to be built up around Rotorua and all the way around Rotorua. So as a 15-year-old, it was very exciting driving the car through water around the edge of the lakes, and that's my main memory of it. But we do have some memories of what was there before. And yes, that's how we know that there were houses that were, you know, brought back and removed. And those sites might have been built on again since.
And the other comment, Chair, and it's not directly related to this, but in terms of resilience and preparedness, there's a communication which you had on your screen. And I noticed yesterday that whoever the power company is doing major repairs or renewal of the power infrastructure there.
Yeah.
But the cell phone coverage, from my experience, is not good in some parts of those areas. And I think if that should be a focus going forward to improve that. So if something does happen, people get isolated either by slips on the Rotorua's flooding, that they do have a point of contact and it's reliable.
And look, that absolute lack of cell phone coverage out there is the exact reason why Chorus, out of their own pocket, has gone to putting in the fibre broadband through those whole communities. And there was a long discussion with them that they came to the party and understood that it was a real matter of safety for those communities. So congratulations to us for doing it. We have to acknowledge them here.
Thanks, Rob.
Mayor Tapsell,
Okay, well, thank you very much. Just a quick question to start off with, because you know we're easily well over 10 million, probably $20 million worth of recommendations here. What is just estimate, what is the current population of these communities?
So Rotorua has 200 houses in it. Rotorua has about 80 houses in it, and about 40 permanently occupied at Rotorua. So one thing that has happened is, as we've seen house prices going up in Rotorua over the last 5 years or so, suddenly those properties out around the lakes have become incredibly affordable. A lot of them are on Māori leasehold land, especially at Rotorua. And so suddenly we've had a whole lot of people moving out, and houses that used to be batches becoming permanent homes. And I've watched this happen over the last 5-10 years, and I can only see it accelerating in the next period of time as well. So I'd say they're growing communities, yeah.
Yeah, that was my next question as well. How many residents living there on a daily basis compared to population? So thank you for answering that. I do just want to note, just because of the significant amount of cost in this, and I really appreciate the work that's gone into it, but by accepting that we will investigate or assess any cost or action on these, I just want to note that in itself will also be quite a significant unbudgeted cost. So while I appreciate that this is certainly recommendations and there's a desire for this, we're just very mindful from the Rotorua Lakes Council perspective that a lot of these will require, I suppose, an appropriate funding plan, yeah, and really significant costs, which would be quite hard to justify given the population that is there and who pays for it and why. But yeah, we'll certainly take on board. But I did also just want to question whether there had been sort of any technical advice behind these recommendations, or is that what you're requesting that the councils go ahead and do as well?
Yeah, so we have had technical advice, and we've got an extended technical report here that we'll distribute around, and also I'll make sure all staff, appropriate staff at both councils get those reports. And look, we totally understand about the cost of Tanya, and in our request that there be a resolution that councils report back, we're not asking for councils to report back on how they're going to do this. We're asking that councils report back on what their plan is to try and achieve it. So how will councils approach this? The really important thing for us is that this is not forgotten. If the report doesn't disappear, the recommendations don't disappear. So we're very happy, I'm very happy to go around and sit down with staff and talk through what we were trying to achieve in each recommendation. It may be that what we're trying to achieve with a recommendation can be achieved. And we can bring that we could come up with that solution with staff.
I think that's, I think you've given a fair overview. It's a lot of recommendations, and clearly there's a lot of stuff to back it up. I suppose the bigger question is where to from here, which is captured in your motion. So I suggest that we go to our motions, or the recommendations rather, and go through them one by one, because there is issues of finance, who's involved, and so on and so forth. So if I just take the first one, that the Rotorua Lakes Strategy Group received the report, Building Climate Resilience for Lake Rotorua and Rotorua communities. I think that's pretty straightforward.
Work that one, Mr. Chairman.
Given, I would like to second. Thanks, Nikki. Second one, that we receive and acknowledge the recommendations. Maybe we'll put that together in the first one as well. I mean, it's just
Just Mr. Chairman, because I'm With my Bay of Plenty Regional Council hat on today, most of the recommendations, and it's been talked about the cost, 95% of the cost is on RLC. And what you're asking me today is to commit to an RLC cost-looking scheme, and I'm really nervous about that because I cannot speak on behalf of RLC. So if we just receive the recommendations, I'm okay about that. If we acknowledge them, well, if you acknowledge them, you're saying, well, actually, we're going to do this. Well, I can't commit my council or RLC to doing any of this stuff. I'm just nervous sitting here today, Mr. Chairman, for the recommendations. Yeah, I understand what they're trying to do, but I'm just nervous about committing future councils to doing this work program.
Well, probably,
So if you can put that into a wordsmithing exercise, happy with that.
I think you made the point that it's basically on the council to decide. So I'll be pretty much led by council leadership on this.
So, Mr. Chairman, one of them is NZTA. Well, we know NZTA in the next 10 years, they've got their land transport program, and I don't see any money in the land transport program for State Highway 30. So, you know, you're talking long-term funding programs to be instigated here.
Well, I think that's probably leading into 3, but I mean, we're receiving it. We've done that already. And I'm not a wordsmith. Welcome, Annick, you know what? But the question that I'm asking, I suppose, is this committee tied, as Kevin has expressed, to doing anything other than that? Because acknowledge sort of seems to say, okay, we got the report, we understand where it's come from, that's it, no more, nothing else. Because the next motion is talking about, well, we go to the next phase, which I'm sort of thinking, I think we can, I'll be led by the committee, but I'm sort of comfortable with just adding on and acknowledges the recommendations. That's it, because it's just a report to the committee, that's it, nothing more, nothing less. Sorry, Metepsel.
Yeah, and thank you to Councillor Winters for raising that, but there is significant risk here, and I was also quite nervous just with the wording of it, if it's then interpreted that there is any commitment to it, because with the significant unbudgeted allocated cost, even just to do the work, we have not had an opportunity to discuss this with our council. We've not had an opportunity to consult with the wider community that would then have to pay for it. So very happy to have received the report, but just to ensure that we're very clear moving forward, I'm not able to accept the other recommendations as they are, because even acknowledging the recommendations could be interpreted in future that there's some commitment to understanding some.
Is there a commitment in principle to the kaupapa, and then subject to the change that is likely to come in the future, this group recommend that there's already been a discussion in principle that the approach is supported. I take your point that you don't want to be seen to be straitjacketing future decision makers, but it would be helpful, I think, as a future decision maker, given that we have a real problem here. This group is really clear that as a matter of principle, this is something that should be supported. We're not asking for a funding commitment beyond that.
We might be able to pick that up as a separate motion in kind, because the first point is that we've received the report, so we're taking recommendation 1 is done. I think in a lot of the discussion that we leave, the second part acknowledges the recommendations, because we've sort of, in a sense, receiving the report, got that dealt with. Now we come to the crunch part, which is consider how agencies would be able to respond to the recommendations. Reporting back on the first.
I'm happy to move 3.
So that's simply opening the door up to people to come together to consider what might happen after this. So it's been moved by the second. And or add in anything else, edit or captured there. Can I just make one note, and that is that at our last meeting, I asked that all of us commit to having all parties at the table, including Arawa Lakes Trust. And when it says there, just the agencies, because it sounds like the road transport agency is going to be involved and others, that I think that we note that as a partner, that both councils and Te Arawa Lakes Trust will present a response which binds Te Arawa Lakes Trust into that. And
That's
that's
what
off
the
the
supported considers how agencies. It's all encompassing, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I think we need to be a little bit more explicit in this one, bearing in mind that there are councils plus TEL
And
part of the arrangement.
NZTA, put them there as well. They're part of this.
All right, so there's our motion that both councils and TEL, NZTA, present a response at the first session next year outlining how and when they will implement the recommendations, key areas to address, including road access to Rotorua, sewerage reticulation, flood preparedness and communication, and resilient, take up one of those ends, and resilient building alternatives to manage the retreat, Kevin's moved. Are you still comfortable with that?
Yep.
Seconder?
Yep.
Given any sites here, just is there an objection to that statement of principle? I think it's implicit in it, but it would be really helpful. I know that the communities we represent are worried about time lag. So it would be really, really helpful if we all agreed that this is something that is deserving of a commitment, and note that this is the strategy of implementation going forward that's outside our control.
So can you give us lead as to any wording or?
I was saying that we have discussed this matter as in depth, and we, as a matter of principle, support what is being proposed, and it should go, that 3 should go 2, and then the next one be following. It's a very important issue for Te Arawa.
Notes that we have discussed this, so that would, number 3 would go to number 2 as a suggestion. We have discussed this in depth, and note that in principle, part of the word.
And note that we have implemented support at this time.
In principle, support at this time.
And then the next one says those are the strategies of implementation that would happen, subject to those other measures you've discussed.
Shift number 2.
I'm just wanting to have a clear steer to the future that this is really important.
Notes that. So number 1, receive the report. Number 2, that we have discussed this matter in depth, and note in principle support at this time. So you want to add in support to the report?
To the report.
Note in principle support of the report at this time, and therefore request that both councils, etc., etc.
Yeah.
All right. So Kevin, you initially put up the mentor to move it. You still comfortable then?
Chair, I must say I'm a little bit uncomfortable with the portion there that says they shall report back outlining how and when they will implement.
Yeah, that's the movement.
Because that doesn't give the agencies, especially RLC, the opportunity to come to the table and prioritise. These are the easy ones, these are the harder ones, and these are the ones that, you know, really require some. But I think point 2 is fine.
So
we should reconsider the clause about implementing the recommendations.
Yeah. So somebody from Lakes Council, Andrew, any comment on that one, or Mayor Tapsell? Oh, sorry, your hand's up. Sorry, Tanya.
Thank you, and very happy for Andrew to also chip in here. Look, I'm really sorry, but you know, to make good decisions, it does take time and it requires conversations. And I have not yet had an opportunity to discuss this with a wider council. We are rather awkwardly in an election period where it's quite clear that it's supposed to only stay business as usual. So it's very, very clear that in this time we're not supposed to be taking on additional projects or costs. But I do just want to note, like, I mentioned it briefly, but if I can just give you a really quick run through, like raising Soda Springs Road will be a $1 to $2 million investment, alternative routes a $3 to $5 million investment, sewage reticulation, that's $8 million roughly. You know, so these are really, really significant costs that we have certainly not discussed in depth. So while the recommendations are there, we would probably need time to look at the further technical advice. And also, of course, given the very, very small population compared to that cost, we will need to consult with the wider Rotorua community before we even signal that we would be supportive of it. But I'll just see if my chief executive has any further comments to add to that as well.
Thank you, Matt. Excellent, Chair. Thanks for the opportunity to offer some comments. I never know from the back whether I'm allowed to speak or not. I'm reflecting what a lot of councillors here have been through is if I look at the list that's already ahead of us for items that groups want us to do as soon as the new council comes on board, and I haven't even heard the list of what the councillors themselves will want, I think it is quite difficult. There's no if in there, it's a how and when. So which implies that there will be some action, which already means that we're committing the next council to something that I haven't had a chance to discuss with them at all. So that would be my real caution around the wording of it as it stands. But I think that has articulated well.
Thank you. Let's see if we can move it on. I think the question, I'm not aware any, but maybe just take out this concept of in-depth. But just note that we did discuss the report and note in principle support of the report at this time. And because of the issue around the time lag and so on, that we need some sort of statement I would suggest that asks each of the parties to go back and reflect on the report, and that it is an agenda item when we come back at the first meeting next year. That's all we can do really, I think, under the circumstances. Is everybody sort of comfortable with that? Because I think the points are well made. Everybody said it, that we are in a state of new councils, changeover. We need to, there's a lot of work here. And so I'm just basically booting it to the side until next year when the new council comes in for the purposes of moving this on. Is everybody sort of generally okay with where we're heading on that? I know it's not the best thing for the whānau that have been working on this stuff, but under the circumstances, I don't see that we can do too much else without committing. And so we're either going to say, no, we can't commit and end the story, or leave it to hang until the new council comes in. Those are the choices, I think. So to help out, I'd suggest that we take out as it is, and then number 3 would be that this board, what are we again? Committee. This group asks that all of the affected parties, firstly to this group and indeed NZTA, be given the report to consider a recommendation, or consider it with the opportunity to address the recommendations at the first meeting of the council next year, or whenever it is. So there's a sort of a midline. Kevin, you're still named there.
I'm just waiting for Mirinda to weave her magic on the words, Mr. Chairman.
Well, as long as we've got the general intent.
If that's what you said, yeah, we're just, council's told NZTA partners present a response at the first session next year, outlining how they will consider these responses, something like that.
These recommendations.
How they will give effect to these recommendations rather than implement.
Well, we can't give effect because these are hugely costly items, and to give effect to is you need money on the table, and I can't commit my council to putting money on the table at this stage.
Well, I think, yeah, just stop it at the end of, no, that's fine. Recommendations. Well, I'll just make sure that we've drop that one down after that. Do we need to add in all of those other bits and pieces?
No,
they're in the report.
They're in the report. The
Take out all of
recommendations are in
those things after that. And Nick.
I just wanted to say on behalf of the working group that the important thing to us is that staff at councils are looking at how they might do this.
Yeah.
So I think that captures what we're after. I thank you for the discussion. What, as I said at the beginning, the really important thing for us is that this is not forgotten. We understand there are high costs associated with this. We are not expecting the money to be given out day one, year one. We are hoping councils towards the recommendations over a period of time and start planning for the various recommendations in their long-term planning. And that might be over 20 years.
Good point. I think we've captured it.
We have.
Kevin's moved. Somebody like to second? Luki will second. Any discussion? Left guy, my key, my eye. Against?
Sorry,
Carry.
I'm gonna have to vote against that, and I'd like that noted, please. I just can't signal any intention that the Rotorua Council will support this without having had a discussion with the new council or the community on the cost of this. There's absolutely not that amount of money allocated within the next 10 years. So while I certainly appreciate the desire and the intent behind it, I have to vote against.
That's fine. I mean, I think we could have covered that base off by simply saying that we're asking everybody to have a discussion about it, and then they come back next year and see where we go to. But that's right. Everybody has their right to go against it. So with this note, the against vote from Peter. All right, and thanks again for the work that's been done. Thanks to the community representatives for being here. Can understand your concerns, especially when your house is underwater. So appreciate you all doing the work that's been done, and also to you, Nick, as well. Thanks very much for the work that's been done. Thank you so much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, move on to our next agenda item, the local government election update. And I think Steve is here to just give a update, 5 minutes. So, Steve, tēnā, welcome to the committee, and your papers are obviously, them have all been read. Everybody's right. I think Kevin to move and Doug to second. Tātou ko te hunga whakai keep my eye. Aye against carried. So I think, Steve, is there anything particular that you want to highlight, or else we just say run the duster?
I'm very happy with that. Thank you, Chair. Happy to answer questions, of course.
I'm sorry to hold you up on the line there, but thank you for your attendance. Look, is there any questions from anyone with respect to the paper presented?
Standard.
Okay, any questions while we got around the local body elections? Any?
Good luck to everybody who's trying.
Any questions from you, Tanya, and or no? Okay, Pike. All right. Well, that was the shortest meeting you've ever been in, Steve. So well done.
Thank you, Chair.
Oh, sorry. Listen, just thank you. The question was asked about just getting the council, the board, the group, to get an understanding about a possible first meeting date for next year. Have you got any sort of views about generally when, or even this year? Because we had to have a discussion in for a working group with our what's your title? Coordinator. Well, no, my friend, around just the timelines and possibly having a sort of a workshop type thing come orientation of new members before we have the actual meeting. So I don't know whether that's been a part of the scenario, but I think it would be a good idea, in particular if there are new members. Any thoughts, Steve?
Yeah, so with all going to plan, we should have members appointed to this group, at least for Bay of Plenty Regional Council, by 18th of November is the date when we're looking to have members appointed. Obviously, there's a really big induction program, and I think once we've got the member for this committee, then that would be the point where we could discuss kind of induction and the information that those members need based on the background that they might already have.
So just to elaborate on that, we had a discussion about bringing in new elected members. We've got a refreshed vision and strategy. Well, we want to get that vision and strategy in front of them as soon as possible on our lakes. So it could look like a bit of a workshop and a bit of a field trip out on the lakes after 18th of November and working with Marinda. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll just note for the committee that there's a desire on the part, at least I think, of us to have the orientation process, including new members onto this committee. 18th of November gives us the first point. I think if we can try and do that, bearing in mind there's going to be a lot of work on and new people coming in, etc. Do we think it's possible that we look towards an orientation at least this side of Christmas, or no?
Mr. Chief, Is there any alignment with this to the resource management reform and its possible impact on our relationship? Because under the current contemplation, I saw that they may have that act in place by the end of the third quarter, November-ish. And I'm just wondering, in that orientation, would you have a briefing on those implications if that was known by that stage? Because that would be something that we would see as an urgent issue as part of this relationship going forward.
I think we can look towards putting a small
Jim is here.
group together. Jim, what, Jim? Well,
Madam Chair.
I'll cover that briefly. I'm not exactly sure when the RM bill will become law. They're still working on it at the moment, so potentially.
An advisory group that contemplates, I think, third quarter.
Yeah, as soon as it's released, I'm sure there's the opportunity for us to present on it and work with it if you want to know.
All I'm saying is if you're appointed on the 18th of November and it's going to pass either that month, which is likely because Christmas comes, then you need to include in the orientation any implications for our relationship, because that will be law. You'll be an orientation of what will be rather than what might be. If there's something, for instance, that, and this is our concern, that impacts on our treaty relationship by virtue of our deed of settlement that is implicated in this relationship, then we would need to make some submissions, and we would hope that the council would be on board for that.
So let's just pick it up through Soweto, that we've heard that scenario. We do need to put together a package of orientation, which we can do. My question is, and it's certainly signalling that we need to do that sort of earlier, this side of Christmas. So what we'll do is we'll just pass that to Soweto to coordinate across the board of pulling together if we can, set some dates early so the new people coming in or old people coming in will have it clear, be able to put in their diaries as a note and try and get to that meeting as soon as possible in light of the circumstance expressed by Andy. Everybody comfortable with that one? Good one. All right, top one. So thank you. Thanks, Steve. You can, we'll leave you go.
Chair.
Appreciate
Thank you, members.
Okay, Central Water update for 10 minutes. Gemma, you're in.
All right. Hello to everyone. I'm Gemma from Badpinny Regional Council Water Policy Team. I briefly updated on our topic testing at the end of our last meeting. It was requested that I provide a report and presentation. So I'll take the report as read, but just run through a few highlights. Since our last meeting, Ms. Bishop released his announcement to pause all council plan changes. So freshwater plan changes looking like 2028 at the earliest at the moment. And the resource management reform looks to have a significant shift in it towards that sort of growth, emphasis on growth. So potentially there will be significant change in direction to what we have in our draft freshwater plan at the moment. There is also one of the things we're sort of thinking may happen is a move away from that sort of broad cultural values of money to more specific. If it's recorded and it's a spot, it can be protected, but potentially less of a emphasis on cultural values going forward. So just an emphasis on working together for that 2028 timeframe to see how we can protect cultural values. We have done some farmer engagement. The yellow freshwater management units are where farmers have been represented. We've got 5 groups, mix of dry stock, dairy, kiwi fruit, some arable. We've done around the kitchen discussions with bigger groups and then also some on-farm discussions. There's been a mixed response in terms of whether they're eager for multiple meetings or just once a year type approach, and a varied understanding of government's current requirements in terms of freshwater farm planning, what's coming, what's changing. Key topics that we've, or key themes that we've got from those discussions is that frustration of duplication of administration. So industry wants a lot of information. We potentially might want a lot of information in the future. Central government wants information as well. So how can we work together so farmers can only
input at once and it can be shared between everyone. The importance of flexibility within any rules we put in place, it's in long-term trends and evidence of change. Some questions around the achievability given the impacts of climate change. We talked about that in this group. We know that they predict an increase in TLI of 0.2. We have modelled significant increases in sediment throughout the region. We haven't done modelling of phosphorus, E. coli and nitrogen, but to a lesser extent phosphorus and E. coli are expected to increase and nitrogen not quite as much. And the importance of relationships between council and farmers, and also we'll be talking about soon. Is Kerry Brown online? Just a note, we also have Kerry Brown online, has been involved in the Tanzania engagement. If you have any questions. So there we've had 5 workshops to date and during this topic testing time. That have been met with. We appreciated the opportunity to learn more about the how and why of the draft groundwater and surface water limits. They have raised some concerns about the role that trout play in the limit setting process. Trout have a higher flow demand than native fish. So if you provide for trout, you provide for all the fish. If you provide for the native fish, then it can be a significantly lower flow. It has been, they have sought a more holistic consideration of water quality and quantity effects. They have acknowledged the difficulties of quantifying the impacts on cultural values from water takes, support the idea of the in water takes. Water ownership remains an underlying issue. There is desire for decision-making roles in freshwater or monitoring type roles and concern about residual loss from municipal water supplies and an emphasis on efficient water use. So this was a discussion I had with Nikki about alignment between this refreshed vision and strategy and topic testing. So there are similar actions listed in the refreshed strategy to what farmers are already undertaking. The impacts of climate change are raised in the strategy and also raises concern from farmers as well. Is that dual financial viability and funding viability concern in the strategy, and also farmers in the actions that they're looking to undertake, support for community-driven solutions, concern about pest species and species management, for outcome-focused and science-based policy, and just acknowledging that these are intergenerational timelines. Changes aren't going to happen overnight. And then alignment between the freshwater policy and the vision and strategy. I just would note that given RM reform space, our draft plan as it sits today is likely to change. But at this time, the refreshed vision and draft policy, the vision that's in that has existed for since the first strategy, is incorporated into our policy work. The values identified in the strategy are some of the values that are identified in the freshwater plan change. The submerged plant index is currently part of the NPSFM monitoring, and that's monitoring we already do. Change impacts will make any improvements to water quality challenging. The delay in the plan change gives us a greater opportunity for further collaboration, outcome focus and intergenerational and best knowledge available. And then Waiora is a focus of the plan change and Waiora is in the vision. So that's me. Questions?
Gemma, good to see that in the report you talked about that you'll continue to have engagement across the board on things that you've outlined. And work through some of that quarter. Good to see at the end there the mention of the strategy as is, well, and so on. So, pātai tā tētai. If not, I'll just ask mover in a second to receive the report.
Move.
Thank you, Kevin, and it'll second.
Can I ask some questions too, for clarification more than anything?
Or I'll just pass it unless it's going to, let's just move
It's
it.
about clarification, okay. I'm principle and support, just a couple of issues that, so you talked about engagement with farmers and engagement with, Tangata Whenua is likely separate. Te Arawa Lakes Trust have a significant farming interest and, you know, is there cross-fertilisation happening in those engagement processes to ensure that our economic interests are also being considered not in an isolated or siloed way from our environmentally ecological ecosystem responses, because I just don't like being siloed.
Yep, that's a good question. Te Arawa Aratoa are one of our farming groups, so that's the Te Arawa Pastoral Collective. So we've met with them in Rotorua, and they represent the Te Arawa in terms of all the land. So they are our main.
But is there cross-fertilisation? So you have an opportunity, and I don't want it to be Māori only. I'd like community only. But, you know, the farming law that just changed, for example, which enables effluent discharge to go without resource consent is quite alarming for us. With our environmental hat on, at the same time, we've got this farm that is really important. Well, so is there cross-fertilisation of participation between and amongst those groups?
Not with this engagement that we currently have, because we are sort of going to specific groups to talk about specific parts of the plan change. When we meet with Te Arawa Aratoa, then I guess to a certain extent, they wear both of those hats as landowners and kaitiaki that live beside a lake. And maybe Councillor Tataru might be able to speak to that one as well.
Chair, if I could just clarify, Te Arawa Toa is focused on its members. It isn't broader to the community you're talking to, Annette. So I think what I'm taking you're saying is how do we get the blend together?
So that we should prevent misunderstanding of each other's position, and we could make recommendations that may accommodate each other's positions without necessarily angst.
I'm not sure, well, we don't have any of that planned at this stage, given the delay that central government has directed us to, that sort of intensive community engagement phase. I would envisage that would probably happen again once we've got a draft plan that we release.
Just to capture that on the notes, is there anything that you'd like to say that represents the view of this group back to officials to say that this committee?
So I'm asking that if we have a more inclusive engagement strategy, and I've used those two examples, but there might be other groups that we should also be including, to have a separate meeting, just, you know, because I'm sure that we have different views, you know, we see these things in different ways, but I think ultimately we might want the protection of that river space or that water space or the farming ability to continue. It's just finding solutions without imposing them. The second question I go came.
Sorry, Annette,
Mr. Chair, just to talk to Annette's point, I think that I agree with that issue of bringing parties together to have a conversation. At the moment, they are working in semi-silos, talking to themselves. So I think that point, and it's making, if I get this right, and it is about how do we bring them together to have this conversation together and come up with some solutions together. I think that is wanting, definitely wanting. It doesn't happen that easily right now. And I think it's something that should be considered.
So I think the point that's been made for a minute is simply saying the committee asked that communications between partners is a consideration moving forward. In that nature.
More inclusive engagement between parties to assist in policy development.
So is everybody sort of comfortable with that sort of note? So we're just noting that? Sounds like it's okay, Doug?
Thanks, Chair. Look, that request is reasonable. And I think we need to note that the regional council at the time of all this debate with the Crown and deferring, we could have said no engagement whatsoever. We just put everything on hold, but we didn't. We thought, let's try and prepare the groundwork going forward so that when the government do make a decision, we've done a lot of mahi in terms of engaging with the community. Last thing, Chair, if I could suggest or make a plea to you in terms of this forum, that as part of your workshop in the early part of the triennium, that you look at a presentation that we received as Regional Council the other day from Dr. Alison Jews. I think it was titled Recloaking Papatūānuku, and it had real heavy emphasis on modified land use, a lot of focus on Rotorua here in terms of some of the lakes and the modifications that farmers are putting in place, planting, changing the way that they farm. Really a good presentation, and I think as the trust you would be very pleased with the arrangements and cooperation between the farming community and what we've been able to achieve as the regional council, because we subsidise a lot of very good, highlighted what, 5 didn't it?
7 farms.
7 farms. I think 5 of them.
5 in the Rotorua area.
So we'll just note that for our minutes that we refer that reference on to Sweta, who'll be coordinating that whole production period. And second point.
So it's section 7, page 38. I like those guiding principles. So wondering though, if we've got ecosystem health or something like that I might be missing. So it seems to be implied but not there.
Okay, I don't have it in front of me, but ecosystem health is a key value in the National Policy Statement for Freshwater, a compulsory value, and will be blended across the region.
I'm just wondering, it's nice to have a reminder in our own guiding principles that while we've got that statutory obligation, our tikanga is guiding to ourselves towards ecosystem health of our waters.
So we would like to have.
It's wordsmithing, not any other. And then the other one that I had, I picked it up mainly in the presentation, not from the notes. I'm glad that you see the allocation of water and water ownership and discharge and uptakes interrelated. Is there kind of contemplation of presentations to this group around that particular issue? Because it's really fundamental in our settlement.
Okay. I can put that to my team going forward.
We'll just note that for the next first meeting as an agenda item to consider a presentation by whoever that group is on that matter. That should, is there any other last matters? If not, I'll put the motion. Against, carry. And thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate your making here and information. Everyone, we've just got one more item in the double cup of tea. The regional diversity strategy connecting people with nature. The President Helen is that Helen? Oh, there you go, sorry. Helen here to present on that behalf. We've got about 10 minutes, Helen, and everybody's got your report.
I've got a presentation. Yeah, is that okay? So it's taken. I'll get started anyway. Morena Tato, I'm the Risk Catchments Manager for the Regional Council, and my colleagues in the planning team have asked me to come and just ask you for your input on the development of a regional biodiversity strategy for the Bay of Plenty. So the National Policy Statement for Indigenous Biodiversity requires that the Regional Council develop a strategy. We'll start developing that strategy by the 1st of July next year and completed by 2033. So we're in the early stages of that, and just wanting to reach out to our co-governance groups like this one and other partners to get their input on how they'd like to be involved with the development of that strategy. So I've got some photos it's working. Sorry, Miranda. I've got a presentation with some photos in it just around how we already work together with biodiversity type projects in the Arawa Lakes catchments. So
There's lots of joint projects that we've got. I've got some really good photos of them in a PowerPoint, but it's really large and it's loading, so maybe here it is, it's all right. Sorry, yeah. So I'll just start talking about them and hopefully some of them will pop up eventually. So one of them is at Sanitarium Reserve, so just down here. Here we go, perfect. Thank you. And awesome, thank you. So first one, sorry, that's not actually at Sanatorium Reserve. So this is one that was funded through the deed of funding, actually. So the deed of funding that for the Lakes program. So this is on the Winiata property at the head of the Paringa catchment. And this was an organic dairy farm, and you can see the drains. This is before the wetland. We built a wetland here. So this is before it was built. This is what it looked like. You can see the drains there, and you can see that it's farmed. And then this is the Arawa Lakes Trust team we blocked the drains and put these riffles in to slow down the water so that it treats the water that's coming through the wetlands. So all the drains are blocked, the riffles are built, and it's planted. So this is planted with wetland plants. So this was a 9-hectare wetland, and it's borders on the Waikaruru wetland, which is a large wetland, a high priority biodiversity site with a lot of really great native birds like the spotless crake and the Australasian bittern. And so this extends the habitat for those birds. And it's looking really wonderful. And it's a great win for water quality in the Lake Rotorua catchment and the Paringa catchment, but also for biodiversity, which is why I've included it. And this is Sanatorium Reserve that we've just been talking about. So on this project, we've worked with Rotorua Lakes Council, the regional council. It's jointly funded by both those parties. And there's been a lot of work undertaken here. This is a photo of Sanatorium Reserve. It's ongoing work. So you can see the spots that have been sprayed out here. These spots all around there, they were bamboo, like really large stands of bamboo. This has got the cycle trail, so you've got the wastewater treatment plant there, but it's got a really beautiful cycle trail all through it into town. And so those sites were sprayed out, really bamboo, really hard to get rid of. And then this is a picture of the actual bamboo, and the cycle trail beside it. And this is what it looks like now. And all of this vegetation here that's coming back is all native regen. So we don't need to plant plants there to regenerate the native species there. We just need to do weed control and let that come back on its own. So that's been a really awesome project too, and there's lots of that's a significant site because it's got lots of geothermal kānuka and provides habitat for other birds too. So a really great project. And this is Te Pōhui wetland. So Te Arawa Lakes Trust have been working on this wetland, and it was funded with the Jobs for Nature program as a result of COVID. That funding's run out now, but the regional council's come in and we're funding the next 5 years to do the next 5 years of work on this. So this is it. On Lake Rotorua, out by Tikitiri there, that's about 9 hectares again, I think, Zoeta, or something like that. And you can see the wallow control that's happened up to about here. And then there's all that extent that still needs to be controlled, and there's lots of weed control to keep doing to restore this wetland. And here's the team, that's a photo from earlier this week actually. So the top crew out there, that was all gorse, I think, around those plants that they've mowed all that down and getting on top of it again. So it's a really great project as well. And the last one's the one that's really this is 5 Mile Gate wetland. So this is a before photo. We haven't got any drone footage of it since a care group and TALT have done a whole lot of work in there removing pest species like the Douglas fir that you can see there. There's a whole lot of honeysuckle. And so we haven't got an after drone footage of this, but this is the before drone footage. So this is my neighbour was raving about this because he goes bird watching and he went out here and he saw bittern. And apparently if you go onto iNaturalist, there's people coming in here all the time, finding all the plants that are just rare and they can't believe they're finding them. So it's just out on State Highway 5, so it's amazing. And can I make that video go, or I'm not sure how this works on there you go. So it's just going to do a flyover for you. So anyway, I just included these examples of the things that we work on together already, and this biodiversity strategy is a good way for this group to have input put into how and what we prioritise moving forward. So we're really keen to get your input on how you'd like to be involved in the development of the strategy. One thing that came to mind for me was, in terms of relevance to this group, was we've been working on the Lakeweed business case, and a big driver for that is aquatic biodiversity in the lakes. So this group might like to put forward that lake biodiversity could be included in the strategy, and the investment in that lakeweed control is really important. We need to maintain that. So yeah, good to hear your feedback on that.
I guess that was my question. Does this strategy include freshwater, our lake biodiversity? And in that sense, I would say, how do we see ourselves in the process leading it? Under the Te Arawa Fisheries Act, we have to protect our biodiversity, our mahi and kai species. We have mahi whakahaere, the plan to protect them. So certainly very much involved. Yeah.
Can I ask a more technical question? That's a kind of a wish list. Have we got a costing of what that particular aquatic biodiversity project might look like?
The Lakeweed business case we have, yes, that was presented last time, and there was a range of options. There's kind of a do minimum, do maximum, and a range of options in between. So Sawita's got the info, a one-pager on that. We can give to you, but there's a range of options effectively. So you can up to, I think it was about $90 million over 10 years, wasn't it, Sawita? Yeah, that's the do max.
Questions, any other questions?
Maybe just one more point. Just when we're talking about water quality interventions, just highlighting those interventions that you've mentioned here, where you also got a co-benefit of increasing biodiversity, and you're working with Te Arawa and in activating the community, that now aligns under all three strategic priorities of our refreshment. So as opposed to other water.
Nature-based solution. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, just to make a comment on the Winiata farm, it's nice to see they were a lead organic farmer originally.
Yes, they were.
And see them go this far, the family go this far, so their commitment to the environment from a tikanga Māori point of view too, they've been very much strongly in that space. I want to acknowledge that. In terms of the sanatorium, it's nice to see all of that repair on the top, but we do have a rubbish dump somewhere underneath, which was, the baby boomer used to be the dumping ground for about 20 or 30 years for all our undifferentiated public credit to the lake. So what we see at the top and what's happening underneath would be an interesting conversation to have at some point.
Yes, it did. I didn't actually mention, one of my team wanted me to tell you that a large part of that was actually a massive rubbish, not a rubbish dump below the surface, but a massive rubbish dump of the surface. So that's all been where people had just been illegally dumping. So that had all been cleared out as part of that, as that biodiversity enhancement project as well. It's ongoing. But yes, there is a rubbish dump. The ground there, historical one.
50 or 60 plus years, it will be really right now. So that's all I'm saying. So some sort of sense what are the impacts of that in time? That particular space would be interesting. So.
Just a follow-up, so was this a remediation to the rubbish dump, or was this a biodiversity program? So
a biodiversity program, yeah.
and it just happens the only space you got was a rubbish dump. Okay, cool. Okay.
Well, it's a significant biodiversity site, so it's got the Sanatorium Reserve has geothermal rare and endangered geothermal kānuka, and a number of other sites for bird habitat that are also rare and endangered. So it's not, so it's a high priority biodiversity site. yeah, that's why it needed that investment. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Thanks, Chair. This is good stuff, but in terms of advocacy going forward, could I suggest that you work with Helen and others, because sitting underneath all this biodiversity stuff is the inevitable need for biodiversity credits, as opposed to playing the game in terms of the ETS. I mean, we've been advocating for a while, haven't we, Helen? But I think for the private landowner, and you've got a lot in terms of your trusts and corporations, the opportunity to be recognised for what they're doing on the Pamu is high, but it's going to need good advocacy, right?
What would you like us to note in the minutes with respect to we don't?
Oh, no, it's just an awareness thing that when we're talking about biodiversity, those who people are putting the work into it, I think need some recognition. Credit. But it sits at the Crown level in terms of whether or not they can be party to things like the ETS, the carbon credit issues.
All right, with that in mind then, I think we're looking to receive the report, Regional Diversity Strategy with Nature, and appreciate very much the work that's gone into that, and it's going in a positive direction. Do I have a mover, please? Thank you very much, Phil. Seconder, Kevin will second. Any discussion?
In her opening statement, she wants to, or a closing statement, she wanted to make sure that aquatic biodiversity was committed to. Can we have that as an express part of that motion? Am I captured your language right?
I just was thinking about how you might like to consider this would apply to you, and given we're focused on the lakes, and we've already heard the information about the business case and the lake biodiversity, that might be something you want to request is included in the biodiversity strategy.
So we would support something along that line being included in our recommendations.
So I'm not too sure, but I think we're receiving the report. That's number one.
Yeah.
The second part would be
recommendation that we expand our biodiversity programs to include a focus on aquatic biodiversity and a project for that in the future. Sorry, I'm going too fast.
Well, again, I think
You figure it out.
your questions here, where do partners see themselves in the process? We see us very much involved. So the next step would be us to get together and influence that strategy so that we
Design and implement. I would love that.
does that,
Implementation is the wrong word, okay?
the recommendation, does it suit what you, right, and you're happy?
Yes.
All right, so we'll include that in the motion. Is there any more discussion? I can't remember, did we have a mover and a seconder?
Yes, we did.
Yes, we did. All those in favour, keep my eye. Against? Carry, couple. All right, it's now 10 past or so, 8:30, cup of tea time, have a break, and we'll be back at 11:30. Now we're back on the agenda. There's some members have to leave a little bit earlier, and so it's sort of my view that we'll still obviously cover the agenda items, but we're presenting. I can just ask on the assumption that everybody has read the reports, that we keep it high level to suggest, well, here are the key points that you want to highlight, such that we allow more time for question and answer. If there are questions and answers, or else the assumption is that everybody's got the general papers and the gist we're going to. So if we are presenting, we can spend solid time and just rather than going over the report, cut us to the chase about where the key aspects that we need to consider. And then we'll go for question and answer that allows us to have a bit more debate time rather than go back over the report. That's fine. All right, so moving on to our first item 9.5. The Rotorua Lakes Program Funding Deed Compliance Prudential Code 2024-2025 annual report.
All right, morena koutou. So today, I'll be presenting on the Pūrongo annual report 24-25. I will take the report as read. It is attached in your agenda, page 46. So only providing an overview of the highlights and change of format. Now that Tolt is leading the reporting on the Lakes Program. So purpose of the report, it is a requirement of the funding team with MFE for an annual report to be provided against ongoing work on the deed funded lakes and ensure we meet the compliance requirements of that deed to report against. Also, Maherea Tau 24-25 annual work plan. However, there is an intentional shift with this report and the purpose of the report following the strategy group review and changes to the funding deed to support Help to Lead and also elevate the values of Te Tuapapa o Ngā Wai o Te Arawa and align the report with the refreshed vision and strategy. And you remember those are some of the recommendations that came out of that review. So 2023, the review revealed reporting on the lake program work had been narrowed in scope and largely focused on just 4 priority lakes and the deed funded activities that mentioned as part of that overall action plan that this group agreed to. We've adopted those recommendations was that the strategy group needs to ensure the strategy of all lakes underpins planning and reporting of the lakes program. You will remember that we did workshop this last year. We have on the left hand is the whakapapa o te wai, which is taken out of Whakapapa o Te Wai o Te Arawa, the Te Arawa Cultural Values Framework, which previously came out of goal 5 of the previous vision and strategy. Now what we've done is we've elevated that out of the goals and right across the whole vision and strategy document. So the right hand is the 3 strategic priorities that exist in the 2025 to 2030 vision and strategy document. That's in waiora, the ecological wellbeing and resilience, waiata, community engagement, involvement and enjoyment, and wairua cultural connection and legacy. So you can see how those 3 strategies are now the headings. Within the report, we've got waiata, and it's going to shift our thinking away from focusing on the deed funded lakes and actually how we're planning and reporting against those 3 new strategies. So it is a little bit clunky at the moment because this report is managing a previous annual work plan that was done under a previous vision and strategy. However, the goal is to shift our thinking. Before we get into that, Waiariki, so overview of the deed funded lakes, and I will ask Helen to come and update on that.
I just thought about that, and I've actually got the next paper is an update on the status update on those, so I could just do it at the same time. Yeah, that works.
Yeah. So you'll report exactly on those things in the next.
Yeah.
So Waiora, all the work here, but highlight projects that Helen's also mentioned that are aligning with the 3 Wai. We've got some reporting from RLC around the Waikawa wetland restoration, working with Te Arawa and community to planting for water quality benefits, Baxendale eco restoration, 3,000 plants along the Utahina, freshwater biosecurity water, our involvement in the aquatic weed control program, working with mana whenua to identify mahinga kai sites and doing restoration there. And then also some of the research projects we have with the University of Waikato Lake, like the lake cast, enhancing lake ecosystem management, and having our whānau out there monitoring and feeding into monitoring water quality around the lakes. So the slide we've got up there is part of our lake statistics dashboard of the 12 Rotorua Te Arawa lakes, showing the short-term and long-term. When I say long-term, it's 10-year trends. So we did have a discussion about this last year about looking at longer term, 30 years, 40 year plus. So that is still in our minds in terms of doing that, but for the purpose of this and the usual reporting with the dashboard at the moment. So all lakes, with the exception of Lake Okawa, saw an improvement in annual average PLI. Last year for the 2024-25 year, 3 lakes, Okaru, Okataina, Rotomahana met or under the RNRP annual average TLI objective. The other 8 lakes have not met that target. Also, fewer health warnings were issued over the 24-25 season for cyanobacteria monitoring. In terms of the ecological health and well-being, these are the indicators we have up there at the moment. We talked about lake spire, so that's looking at our aquatic plants, native and pest. No changes there. Aquatica remains our shining example of restoration activities. So, you know, high across there, that's where we're wanting to head before our lakes. Essentially, native restoration has happened in that lake to the point where we're just doing a bit of surveillance and removing a plant here and there. That's where we want to be with the rest of the lakes. And that's what we're hoping to address with the Lakeway business case. In terms of the coda, so showing improving trend in Rotorua and Tiki Tapu since last year's monitoring according to Ian's data. But just noting the change there for Okaro, so you'll see that it says abundant or present, under abundance it says present in Okaro. That is not something that's happened, that is kind of a research project, so they haven't showed up there. And we're not sure if they've lasted in there, so just noting that is the only change and to be aware of it. In terms of the Kākahi monitoring, no change except increased abundance in lakes in Rotorua since last year. Catfish still only present in Rotorua and Rotorua based off surveillance. However, shown an improved trend since last year. That shows it's that stable condition and it's that sustained control effort by the team in terms of the catfish control netting program. Okay, so
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just before you go off that chart on page 61. With the TLIs on the left-hand side, we look at the 3-year average. We've looked at 10-year trends going forward. But actually for this group, we need to look backwards at what the TLI was, and this is for me leaving the building, Mr. Chairman, what the TLI was when this group was formed back in 2006, and what the TLI of the lake was back in 2006, because I know for Rotorua it was 5.1. We've done a Nord, and I'd just love to have another bracket down on the left-hand side, how far we've come for all our lakes, because I know it's there. And people forget of how far we've come in terms of the programs that we've initiated in the last 20 years for this group. And I think it would, because people forget how bad they were. And if we had some sort of visual indicator, Soweto, of when this group started back in 2006 as part of the settlement program. For me, it's sort of a reflection back and a projection forward, and we need to see those long-term trends. I think that would be really useful. The people are saying, oh, you haven't done anything. And I'm thinking, oh, God, So just a wee something in parentheses for me, Soweto, for the next chart. And yeah, that just showing progress, long-term progress.
Yeah, and I think, as I mentioned, we had this discussion, not last year, but last year, in terms of showing that longer term progress.
Yep.
Looking longer term also when we're predicting climate change and how that's going to impact. We've already seen some of Gemma's statistics around, what's being predicted.
The TLI is going to happen in, I think Professor Dennis talks about a 0.2 TLI increase on all our lakes through long-term climate change projections. And that is going to have an impact too.
For me, I wasn't here in 2000. Has there been fluctuations or has it just been going down?
The trend.
Was there trend? Was there any particular events that occurred in that period?
Yeah.
So I would
climatic events.
Yeah. Between if you want to do a comparative study with lots of people, it would be really helpful if we had over that period.
Individual for years. For seasonal, when the lakes are low, the TLI turns a bit, but for the 3-year average is the one you've got to keep an eye on. in terms of the trend going forward, because that sort of takes out that seasonal fluctuation, be it drought, flood, whatever.
But was it last year or the year before when we had all that rainfall flooding that did definitely impact the TLI? So we have seen improvements since then, right? Because that's what's happened. But there is graphs that shows that overall trend. Yeah. So, yeah. Right. So next thing, so the other strategic priority elevated onto here is Te Arawa and legacy with our lake. And I've just highlighted a couple of programs under here that the team have been involved with. So Ngā Papuaia Te Koura is a tautoko restoration plan supporting iwi hapa whānau. We utilise the method of taukora to monitor, restore taukora populations in their own roto with the goal of activating Pātiakitanga and supporting mahi operations. But yeah, Mōhio Mahinga Kaumeti was 3 lakes to date, so it's Whakawera and Okataina. We also have a Rangaho program, so numerous research contracts working with Niwa, Cawthron, Landcare Research, Manaki Whenua, and that is around climate change and taonga species. So just going back to the report with Phil Thomas, we do have our own, we've provided scholarships, and we have whānau from out Ngāti Tomasia Tūtahi, Ngāti Kawati that are working on, you know, they're looking at ground fed and spring feds and lake levels and how that impacts taonga species as well. So just incorporating that when we look back to the climate change space. Te Oro Tarawera, we had the team present to the strategy group beginning of this year, was it? So I won't give a big overview there, but the project has finished, but we're working with the 3 iwi, Ngāti Tarawhai, Tuparangi and Ngāti Rangitihi on a report and all the engagement that was done over that 3-year project and how that might influence things such as the essential water policy that Gemma was talking about. Yeah. And then last on the report, so under this format, we've got Waiata Elevated, which is community stewardship and engagement. And I want to acknowledge there's a lot of community projects going on. There's a lot going on, Phil, etc. I'm trying to make a point here around elevating it in terms of our planning and reporting. So under that, yeah, Waiata relates to the active participation, collective expression of communities and caring for the lakes, fostering opportunities for education, collaboration and meaningful interaction. So that lake significant, it's not only preserved but celebrated. That is that strategic priority. Elevated under that, we're just off the back of Te Tūkopu Ngāwha Mātauranga Science Fair. This has grown rapidly over the last 4 years. I think if I go back one, we've taken this year at the Rotorua Event Centre. I think Nuki's in there, maybe Helen, Williams kids, yeah, your kids. So really cool, really inspiring event. 2025 was no exception, with schools now joining from around the country. Where was the school that took away a few of the awards? Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So yeah, it's getting out there now. So we had over 300 school children and kura present their projects and spoke to their ideas and aspirations and solutions on various topics across biosecurity, biodiversity, climate change, conservation, water quality, and mātauranga-based interventions. So again, you know, our rangatahi have some of those solutions. They had ideas around lake level increases and flooding and what to do with the marae. There's a floating marae and everything. They had things about the Oho wall and the impacts on flow. They had mātauranga solutions for oil spills. So, hey, we're starting with our rangatahi as where our focus. So elevating this is crucial when we want to talk about succession planning, capacity building. And then we also had a presentation even led by TALP but supported by Regional Council and University of Waikato, where we had a number of scientists and researchers come and present, and was well attended. Looking forward to next year one, looking at grow, needs funding, but really important cool event. And then, of course, we've got the Te Arawa Catfish Killers still going strong, over 4,000 students involved, and adapting the netting program into NCA unit standards of their school curriculums. And then this year we've launched Uri for Uwhi. So it works with schools and community to explore, workshop and implement mātauranga-based solutions to issues faced in the Te Arawa Lakes. With Te Rōpūranga ki Rotorua, we've engaged with Rotorua Primary School where they got to harvest, learn about harvesting the tikanga, make, install and work with the team to install that into Lake Rotorua. I think the kids even took it out on their waka team, took it out in the lake on their waka and installed it there. So yeah, pretty cool, pretty inspiring. Yeah, and that's actually the end of the report. But hopefully it's, you know, you can see the transition or the shift in trying to elevate our strategic priorities and where we should be heading now with our planning and reporting. Yeah, deed funded lakes, it's a compliance requirement that we report against that. But let's shift our focus.
Okay, any questions for clarification?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just on page 57, Sylvia, Waiariki financials. So interventions, yep, happy with that. Down the bottom, there's a MFE reserves of $0. And I just wonder, that's not quite right because under the deed funding is still well, there's committed funding going forward that hasn't yet been uplifted. And I'm just, because I know that 10 million came from the incentive scheme and it's going to be paid back, understand that. But in terms of going forward, can we just see a bit of a statement there about the deed funding that has committed but hasn't been uplifted? Because it's not much, but we just, because when we were discussing Tarawera sewage, there was a lot of people saying we'll just use that trust deed funding. Well, no, we can't do that because it's all committed. We just need to be clear in these reports that the deed funding from when it was announced is committed and what it's committed for, and it's all committed. We just can't pull it out of any to do other funding elsewhere. So I'm not, if you understand my question, because there is still deed funding available from the Crown, but it is committed, and I'd just like to see that highlighted going forward.
Okay.
Well, the report's written, so I might just put that in the minutes as a note.
Yeah. This is for future strategy group members, Mr. Chairman.
So can I just be clear on this? So you're saying that this group is tagged funding for future output, that, you know, we can't make decisions to influence new councils, but we can actually tag funding for future commitment. Is that
No,
right?
the tag funding was laid out in the deed of funding.
Okay, so it's a contractual income. I'm just clarifying it.
It's committed, but we just haven't uplifted it yet. And it was all laid out in the deed of funding that was signed by the Crown and ourselves.
How much are we talking about?
Oh, well, if you add back in the 10 million, that's for nitrogen purchase. My accounting system, I think there's about 5 million in there to be uplifted over time. Ballpark figure. For wetland creation, it's for those things that are on the left-hand side.
Are you going to get into this bit when you do your
Helen might.
deed report?
Yes, I can get into answer any questions up there. Yeah, that they're an annual, what's in the annual report is the annual financials.
Yeah.
So, but take your point about the a comment around future commitments would be, headed.
Any other questions for clarity? If not, we'll just, I've known that that's going to be brought up at the next thing. We'll just, if I can, appreciate the work that's gone in to get the report ready. Thank you so much. Recommendation that Rotorua Lakes Trust Strategy Group receives the report. Second. Any discussion, any further discussion? All those in favour, give my eye. Against, carried. And that we approve the Pūrongo Ātau report for submission to the Ministry for the Environment in accordance with requirements for funding, etc., etc. Thanks again. Kevin. So both together, yeah. That's a good idea. Thank you. No, it was Doug and Kevin. Yes, okay. Kevin and Doug. All right, those have been moved. All those in favour, give my eye. Against, carried. And thank you very much for that. So the next part of our agenda will hopefully pick up on some of those points. I think it's you, Helen.
Definitely. Thank you.
You got a presentation?
Oh yeah, I might just remember if it's okay to put that one up again. And sorry, it might just take a wee while, so I'll start talking.
Which one, yours?
Yes, my one, and there's just a couple of slides at the end of it. That was the first one. Yeah, sorry about that. I can start talking and all that does its thing. So kia ora koutou. So my report as part of the need of funding that the partners are committed to with the Crown. There's a requirement to make sure that each meeting we have these project status updates for the 2 remaining projects funded by that deed. And as per Schedule 2 of the deed, they are the constructed wetlands and the Lake Rotorua catchment and the Lake Rotorua incentive scheme. Great. So they are both contributing to, I'm just conscious that perhaps haven't given this presentation before, so excuse me for just going over the basics again, but they are contributing to the integrated framework for Lake Rotorua. So that was adopted by this group in 2015 and is part of the regional policy statement and part of the regional water and land plan about how we're going to achieve the sustainable nitrogen load for Lake Rotorua by 2032. So for the last 10 years, and even before that, there's been a lot of work going into achieving the sustainable nitrogen load through these interventions. And indeed, funding has funding remaining in it for the incentives fund and for the engineering solutions, the constructed wetlands that I've talked about. So I just wanted to give you a bit of an update about how we're going. I'll take my report as read, which has got the status reports for incentives and engineering. But I just wanted to talk to you a bit about how we're going in terms of sorry, no, I can't go back. In terms of this yellow box here. So that's the rules and the incentives. So they're both measured by a model that's called Overseer, which measures the discharge of nitrogen to land from land use activity. So in terms of that yellow box component of the integrated framework, how are we progressing towards that 2032 target load? So in 2017, there was 868 tonnes of nitrogen being discharged to land from land use in the Lake Rotorua catchment. So that we know that because we have had data to support that from Overseer and from our catchment modelling. In the current period that we're in, so we know this based on Overseer returns and our knowledge of land use in the catchment, there's 590 tonnes of nitrogen being discharged to land. To achieve that part of the integrated framework that was highlighted in yellow, by 2032, 505 tonnes of nitrogen needs to be entering land from land use in the catchment. So I just wanted to put that graph up just to show you, to your point, Councillor Winters, the progress that's been made in this catchment by this group and by for Lake Rotorua, and that target is in sight. So to achieve that target, the Regional Council recently adopted a land acquisition strategy for Rotorua. That would need to be funded through its annual and long-term plans, but it gives the council opportunity to leverage off the incentive scheme by purchasing land and changing land use and giving landowners the opportunity to exit the catchment if they wish, and us to retain the nitrogen. And I've attached that land acquisition strategy in your report, so you have a bit of doubt. But I just wanted to put that slide up because it does speak to the progress that we've made, and so I think it's important and shows that I don't want to underestimate how difficult that change from 590 to 505 is. It will require us to be to keep going. We really need, it's going to be difficult, and we need to keep our eye on the prize and just keep moving forward, but it is achievable. And that's really my my report. I'm happy to take any questions.
Page 87. I see a lot of the funding funded by Bay Plenty Regional Council. How much was targeted funding to programs that Arawa Lakes Trust are undertaking?
So for the contracted wetlands,
Or all, I'd like to say, you know, this $5 million, I'm talking from a treaty settlement perspective here. There would be some expectation of us being reimbursed in some way to meet those targets, and I don't see any provision for it. So I'm asking for help.
so Arawa Lakes Trust helped the Winiata wetland that I put the photos up of.
240K. So how much did we get? Is that about the amount? I would like an actual amount because, you know, I'm new to this, but I've been on several treaty settlements and I've never been in one where we actually aren't getting allocation of funding for our own facilitated efforts and these kind of goals.
So do you mean for the implementation of the deed?
Yeah.
So in the deed, under Schedule 2 of the deed, Arawa Lakes Trust is getting $150,000 a year of Crown money, not of regional council money, of Crown money to implement the programs, the reporting that Sweet has done, for example, to run.
Why isn't Bay Plenty Regional Council, sorry for interrupting, but I'm just trying to figure out why we aren't getting a comparable allocation from the regional council. Crown's recognised our value, so what's happening with?
So we have a funding agreement with Arawa Lakes Trust, a funding arrangement. At the moment, that provides about $750,000 worth of funding to Arawa Lakes Trust annually to undertake works that are funded in our long-term plan. So that includes like catchment restoration, building wetland, doing the catfish, that we pay for the catfish killers program.
Spraying.
Spraying. Yeah, sorry, we make a contribution to the spraying, although that's largely the responsibility of the Crown, the lake weed, but we do make a contribution to that.
It's the framework agreement.
Yeah, I just want some numbers because I see a fundamental kind of funding flaw here. I'm just trying to figure out how to find resolutions in this because you look at the numbers and no disrespect, but you're talking about $1 million coming our way from a $15 million allocation.
So say, for example, constructed wetlands, we know the TALT team has a wetland team. How much of the work done under constructed wetland, particularly deed-funded work, has gone to TALT to not only do the work that's needed to remove that nitrogen, but activate our hongatiaki whānau and do that work, and that needs to be made clear in this reporting.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking for.
I think that's what it is.
And I'm new, so and my people from Ngāti Pikiao are really anxious about this because we are really worried about the future and the ecosystem health of Koura, for example, and it's a real issue for us.
The issue about, I think, as a board member, the issue about the funding allocation is a live issue, probably not for today, but just to signal that in the new councils come around, I think that there is a determination to have that discussion around the allocation. Not only that, but also involvement in projects, as was involved this morning around the involvement of TELT in specific projects that come up, where there is a co-worker, co-management, co-involvement type arrangement, such that the resources that are being hired within TEL are able to be actioned at the point when the Soweto is making, but also the financial contributions, because a lot of that stuff is assumed that TEL will do it, but they haven't got the money, I think. I might be talking out of turn, Nookie, but that's, I think, is that the general gist of it?
Yeah.
So I can put that in there, not for today, but certainly down the line for the new council when they come on.
And it would be assisted in that discussion by some breakdowns because it's very general in the current format. And in the deed of settlement that I'm talking about, which is the Arawa deed of settlement, you know, there was a tripartite arrangement with contributions, but a significant financial contribution of our settlement to the well-being of this.
I think, you know, part of, you know, it's been committed that the rest of the data funding, it's been committed to certain things in terms of removing the nitrogen within that catchment. And that's the what, that's the why. But in terms of the how and the who, but it comes under Wairua, Waiata, you know, we could probably do that better.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's just pick that up on just the way, that's a good point. Mayor Tapsell. Yeah, boy.
Oh, thank you, and I agree that was a really good point, and would certainly support that coming forward on a future agenda and having that discussion. My question specifically, and it's from pages 80 on, just regarding, it's just sorry, it just seemed a little bit off when I was going through it. So just a question probably, because it appears that regional council is departing from the land incentive scheme to now adopting the new policy for land acquisition. But I'm just wondering whether that approach should require the strategy group's agreement before the existing land incentives program funding, which has been quite significant, is diverted to land acquisition. And if I have misunderstood that, please let me know. I didn't quite understand how it's changed without a discussion of the strategy group.
So the incentive scheme has not changed at all. So the incentive scheme will keep running as it is. The regional council has adopted another tool that it will fund to help meet the targets. So the incentive scheme policy and the way it runs and how it's funded does not change. The regional council's adopted another tool to help get to those targets that they had up on the graph earlier.
Okay, thank you. So the new tool, the new policy, the land acquisition, is that funded independently from the regional council, not through the strategy group?
Funded by the regional council. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? As a young fellow that used to swim in Rotorua once upon a time, I was interested in those stats. And on the face of it, I'd say, are we really making all of the returns that you want? That might become a tourist who wants to have an opportunity to swim back in my lake again. Yeah. But on the face of it, you'd see that we're almost not winning the battle, despite the efforts that are going on. I don't want to diminish that. So is there any way of capturing not only this data that tells us where we are, and also to pick up the points from Kevin, of matching that up with the strategies that we have in place to see which one is working? And it might be different for each lake, I'm just asking. And if so, how often would we be able to get a good steer on progress being made? Because that's what I want to know, is that accepting that it takes a while, that it's, I don't know how long that hotel thing's been there, maybe 10 years maybe, but on the face of it and the information that we've got there, it's made an impact, but it's not does it match the dollar amount that was put into it, which is the question, which is probably why I was moving away from or moving into land acquisition. I'm trying to get see for us as a group tracking progress to see where and show that we are actually making a huge difference, and it might be because the measures are a little bit too wide. I don't know, it's not my field, but just to see, so we can convince not only ourselves but also our community that there is point made, how much progress has been made and can be made, and what the strategies we are doing, and monitoring it as well as we go. That's a big question, I know, but is there sort of a short answer?
There is a short answer in that we have to do everything we can to clean up the lake. There's no one strategy that will fix it. So every tool and more needs to be employed. And that's what this program's done over the last 20 years. We've done rules, incentives, wetlands, sewage reticulation, removed gorse. And now we're going into land acquisition, built a wall, all of that. And the other challenge with saying that things made that difference to the lake is that the groundwater in the Lake Rotorua catchment is on average 60 years old. In some catchments, sub-catchments up to 120 years old. So what you're seeing in the lake now is what reflects what the land use was 60 years ago. So, I won't see what I'm doing now for me, but my grandchildren hopefully will. So I wouldn't be able to find a scientist. All the scientific advice says what you do on the land dictates what you see in the lake. So they say if you fix the land use, you will fix the lake. And that's the nub of it. But I won't get a scientist to be able to say to you, you've done that and that's why you see that in the lake. Yeah.
I mean, that in itself tells us, you know, that the strategy that we use must be on land-based effort.
Yes.
It's just a steer. I suppose it's really neat to see this. Well, no, it's not neat. It's at least I appreciate the information to be able to say, okay, this is the assessment. But I just want to sort of find a mechanism that allows us to see that we are making progress against set strategies. But anyway.
Yeah, so as mentioned in the report, this is the kind of reporting that's been happening, you know, trophic level, lake submerged plant, gives an idea on some of the things. But what we've identified post the review, and we're wanting to head with our planning and reporting going future, is that outcome. So can I swim in my harvest from my all those sort of things, the outcomes-based monitoring, it does need to shift to that. Yeah. That comes with the planning and monitoring the plan. Yeah.
Cool. Point made. Thank you very much. Mayor Tapsell?
Thank you. And just with the mindset of wanting to achieve the outcome of removing nitrogen, I understand that there's commitments with the land incentives and land-based tools, but I have always wondered, with the water quality, are we actually measuring or seeing what the impact of our natural geothermal is? Because geothermal contains nitrogen. And obviously, you know, we've got places like Sulphur Point, and just recently GNS did some modelling which shows very active geothermal areas there. And I know that they also spoke with Bapton Regional Council, Arawa Lakes Trust. I think it would be quite interesting to get them to present to the strategy group, because what they've already discovered, it kind of blew my mind a bit. And I thought, well, if there's lots of nitrogen coming out of the natural geothermal areas of the lake, underneath the lake, then do we also need to be taking that into consideration as we continue to allocate? Because what is it, 24 million in total or something remaining on the land incentive scheme? Yeah, so just not wanting to set ourselves up for failure if there's other things we could be looking at as well.
So I can comment on the geothermal, if you like. So the geothermal, yes, it is accounted for in our lake modelling. It's accounted for in Rotorua, the lake model. And one of the, you're right that it does contain a lot of nitrogen, and one of our key, remember, I think you might remember that earlier on, we looked at doing the Tikitiri denitrification plant, which was building a great big zeolite, like a cat litter type plant to filter one of the geothermal streams and get the nitrogen out. That is now a priority site for one of these constructed wetlands that is that we'd ideally like to do. So we're working with the landowners there on that. But yes, geothermal does contribute nutrients to the lake and is captured in the lake modelling and targets.
Is that allowed to, so I go to the overseer tool that you're using. Does that take that into account? Because I would, you know, I'm kind of familiar with it. And I'm just wondering, you know, from the 868 tonnes to 502 tonnes reduction, how did that tool take these variables that we're talking about into account?
So overseer measures the farming land use, not the geothermal. So there's a couple of models at play here. So there's the overseer, which is the farm modelling system. So that takes a farm system and models it in terms of its nitrogen losses. So that's separate to Rotan or our lake model. So the outputs from overseer feed the lake model. There's two different models.
So how do we merge those findings to give us a accurate sense of reduction or of standard qualification of this?
We do that. So we're as part of the upcoming the 2020. So the integrated framework is in the regional water and land plan, and that has 5 yearly science reviews in it. And as part of what we've just had one, so we don't rerun the lake model every 5 years, but the one that's coming up in 2027, we're rebuilding our lake model, putting in climate change scenarios. That's quite a big component of it. And we'll be able to see where we're tracking in terms of the reductions on land and all these other variables. So the model takes all of those variables, geothermal, would attract a whole lot of variables and plugs it into a model to try and tell you how you're going and what other things might impact you along the way, like climate change. That's my kind of, layman's explanation.
I'll just ask around, the monitoring that happens. Who actually determines the monitoring that needs to be done, and who does that monitoring? Just taking into consideration our team, the qualified team, and they're able to do that work. How can we get our team involved in that work?
So you mean the monitoring of the consents?
This one.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry, yeah.
Page 61.
Yeah, so that's prescribed, it's not something I'm totally familiar with, but it's prescribed in, there's a certain prescription of legislation that our environmental data team has to do. We have to monitor water quality, we have a lab, they have certain things they monitor and that are funded to be monitored, and they carry out that monitoring. We have looked last year, we worked with Sawita to do the algae monitoring. There's a summer algal technician that comes in to do the bathing water quality monitoring just over that kind of November to May period. And Sawita had someone in mind for that, but unfortunately he couldn't make it for last summer, but it's certainly something we can talk about again.
The question is there room for involvement of
How do we
top
get
team into some of that monitoring that processes?
I'll have to defer, I'm not sure, sorry, it's just not my area of responsibility, so I have to defer that back to, I can put Sawita in touch with the team that does that.
So just going on, from the trophic level, well, the water quality monitoring attributes that in here, we have had some of the team join regional council to, learn the lab work before. We also, as you mentioned, we've got Trevor Smokey, who would have to come over from Waikato Regional Council, but he's whānau here, who would be ideal to be a water quality lead in this space. But in terms of securing someone, you need to offer a full-time role, not a part-time role, if you're going to bring them away from a full-time job. So, and as I mentioned before, through the Lakecast research project, which is only 3 years, but it has our team going out to the same spots, doing the water quality monitoring, and engaging with their whānau around Lake Rotorua. So that's where we're trying to head. We want to be doing the state of environment monitoring on our lakes, and it is in the works. In terms of the other monitoring, of course, we're across the catfish program. That is our team employed to do the catfish work fully. The Kākahi and Koda monitoring sits at the moment. Lake Spy Submerged Plant Index, I believe that's a contract to NIWA, Regional Council contracts NIWA to do that monitoring. But what I would say is we do have a scientific dive team. We've got whānau from Te Rauwhai who have their PhD, they work for NIWA already, they can do that work. So I do think that is a conversation in terms of getting our team to be doing this.
Well, let's put it in that realm, is that we just note for the minutes that we're asking Helen to have a discussion with Sawita and report back about the involvement of Te Arawa Lakes Trust in issues of monitoring and report back to this committee.
Monitoring and nitrogen reduction, because I'd like to see that as also as some hands-on. I'm really worried about that. So
we're talking across the board either way, but
yeah,
you want to have it.
I don't know if that's included in your thing.
So we're talking about state of the environment monitoring here, just doing the monitoring. Interventions on reducing nitrogen as a whole other kettle ball, but
I'd like both in.
So hold on, just make sure we capture that in the minutes. The original one was that was asked for was about the involvement of TOLT in some of the actions that are taking in terms of monitoring. That's where it's got to now. So you better help me with the wording if you want to add into that, Annie.
Well, in scoping going forward, those matters, could we also look at a participation or provider status for TOLT and nitrogen reduction?
And monitoring
monitoring, because I'm still skeptical. I have to be this overseer thing.
So I think two separate things. There's the state of environment monitoring, which we can probably talk about under the framework agreement. Things that we have. And then what I'm picking up is back to the conversation around, like say, constructed wetlands and that. And we're talking about reducing nitrogen in the lakes, how we can be more involved.
I'd like a preferred provider status, for example, on certain projects. Yeah, I mean, we have the beds of the lakes. It's really going to be qualitatively impacted upon by land use. So I would like a preferred participation provider anyway in that. And that's why we've got our team set up to do those kinds of things. We're in certain projects at the moment, but we'll get an opportunity across the board.
So move, to Taru, and then we'll try and move on.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just very quickly from my listening to the conversations, you know, and I think about this group, it's a partnership between the Lakes Council, Regional Council and Te Arawa Lakes Council, Te Arawa Lakes. It seems that there's quite a bit of a deficit and catch up on information and getting everybody on the same page. You know, so I think that's what I'm hearing, and there's a lot of information that needs to be upgraded, if you like, or brought up a bit more so that we're playing off the same song sheet. I know that Regional Council and Lakes Council have been doing what they're doing, and Te Arawa Lakes Trust as well in their partnership, but it doesn't seem to be connecting in the way that information is free flowing enough for, you know, for all partners to be on the same page. That's just my perception listening to the conversation now.
Thank you. So,
Chair, where TOLT can really help us, and it tends to answer Annette's question, is in the new strategy we've got is the land acquisition strategy. So the objective there is to buy the nitrogen and do something else with the land. And then once we've got a parcel of land, together with you people, we seek it because we're going to seek advice, because the next step would be to recirculate that capital by selling down and then buying another entity and doing exactly the same thing. So instead of buying nitrogen off the farmers, we buy the land, and we don't buy the nitrogen, we buy the land, and nitrogen's been released to the previous owner. And that's a negotiation in terms of price that the regional council has with the landowner, but it's recycling the capital of the entity that we buy. That's where you can have some real input in terms of what are those opportunities.
So I think that, having heard that discussion recently, I think that the Te Arawa Lakes Trust is probably up for that discussion. I just want to bring us back to finishing off the report. There's a points well made, and I think it's been heard. But just in terms of the key issue that Taru sort of picked up is about joining the dots. So I can't remember what my words were, but something like, can you, Helen, and Sueta have a corridor about joining the dots is not the word, but have a corridor about the collaborative, and it might be off the back of the strategy, the new strategy, is probably provide a paper about involvement moving forward with the strategy that we have in our hands.
Collaborative opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, opportunities that come from the new strategy moving forward. Now that might be a bit wide, but at least it's capturing in particular, and it should be referenced off the reporting year.
And that kind of paper should look at that kind of tool as a mechanism of, was it going to be a substitutionary arrangement with ETS and stuff as well? So that's how I'm looking at the biodiversity credit situation. I mean, they're all linked for me, these changes. Do you understand where we're coming from? And we seem to be informed after the fact rather than participating in what that effective transformation will mean, both our understanding of reduction of those nitrogen carbon, but then also what would be the obligations of us to protect that, to meet our obligations to our people.
So have we got do you think we've got enough of a minute to?
Yes,
and you sort of got a general understanding, Helen?
Yeah. Oh, good.
All right. If everybody's okay, we'll just receive the report and add in this last bits and pieces to follow on. Somebody like to move the report be accepted? Thank you very much. Well, seconder, Nuki, all those in favour, key my eye. Against, carry. Thank you very much. Te Arawa Lakes verbal agreement, I understand it's you, Gurma, and then maybe Annette, I'm not too sure. Who's I think it's you leading up.
Oh, yeah, I can start. So I just wanted to think about this beaver spill. But before I get into what I want to say, I just want to acknowledge the passing of the driver. He was a grandfather, a father, a husband, a friend. So kanui te aro kia ora. And I want to acknowledge that we know this was an accident. It wasn't intentional. It's one of those things that happens. However, now we're kind of left with a bit of a situation, And I just wanted to highlight that I feel, well, what I've seen and what I've been involved in, the response has been unsatisfactory. Communication's been unsatisfactory, and this is just adding to what we've talked about just now. You know, just to put it to you all, I haven't even received an email saying that there was an accident last week. I've received 2 phone calls, you know, and then when I go to the Awa and I see a set of booms here and water flowing that way and diesel still going under those booms and no one running down to put more booms in, it kind of breaks my heart a little bit. So that's kind of what I wanted to always hear. There is an issue with the comms, and I'm getting questions from our iwi partners about what's happening on the ground. And so I know they're not being told either. So this is just an issue that I wanted to raise here. I have raised it with the pollution team's management, but I would have thought you would have learned lessons from the arena for this. So yeah, it's just a bit pretty disappointing that this is where we're at, and considering all the other work we do together and how well we work together in those spaces, I thought it would have been a lot better, this operation. So.
Something to that too. Yeah, and I'd just like to add to chair that I live in the community. I'm from Waka. I'm from the Puaringa. And I go daily to my bath. And to go the other day, and this was what happened on Friday and on the weekend, and to hear in my bathing community what is Lakes Trust doing about the spillage. We haven't heard anything. And, you know, I had to honestly say I haven't heard anything. And I'm on the trust board. And I felt really saddened that I couldn't give an answer to my people when we hadn't even been contacted about the spillage. We heard about it. It's disappointing working with the regional council. Why this has happened. It's actually more disappointing why nothing has happened. What's the communication breakdown that someone could have even contacted? Myself on the trust board, our Tuarangi Tribal Authority that live in the area. And, you know, I walked across the bridge on the weekend, looking down to the Puaringa thinking, how long before it comes up? How long before? And what do I tell our mokopuna in the village? I can't give them a response because I've got nothing to give them. There's been no communication with Tuarangi representatives on the Puaringa and also with Trust Board. We haven't been given any connection. So I just wanted to share that it's disappointing that we haven't got a relationship that we can talk to each other at least. But it's even more for myself is that I got no answer to give to my mokopuna.
Accepting that it's a major issue, and I know that Kevin wanted to talk to that as well. Is there over and above this issue, is there anything else that you want to provide on that report from the Lakes Trust? Major issue, that the only issue?
Well, we've actually met about it. We've just had a board, and so our leadership group just this evening. Okay, our group, the strategy group, was established under the Told Settlement Act from a leadership perspective, and we have not been joined up, and this has been disappointing. The agencies who have regulatory functions have been discharging these isolation of the wider group, and in particular us, Told. The Told settlement provides for Te Arawa Lakes Trust's role across the lakes and their catchments. In this case, that is all of the waterways within the Rotorua Lake catchment. Te tuapapa o ngā wai o Te Arawa is the environmental policy for Told and the framework for lake strategies. This strategy was approved by this group only 4 months ago and has already been set aside, so it seems. This incident requires the involvement of Told in the hapu and the iwi in all matters pertaining to all waters. The councils are party to the strategy at the governance and operational levels, however, have not engaged with Told o te Arawa hapu and iwi is anticipated in te tuapapa or the newly minted strategy. Disappointing. Might be a bit strong, but just want to get the point across. A motion to recommend to councils review the emergency response processes and structures for incidents related to fresh water around Te Arawa lakes to ensure they align with and are enabling management to deliver to the strategy.
Is that it, Nuki?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so we've got a couple of speakers, so let's just go around for Te Taro.
Mr. Chair, this certainly comes as a big surprise to myself as a councillor Thurston over here, because we've been inquiring within our own system about the level of connection and communication that has been happening. We've had email exchanges. And yes, absolutely agree. Communication is actually essential in this, ongoing and constant communication. While things are happening out there in the field, communication needs to happen. I'll be quite upfront. We've been working off the of reports that communication has been happening. Look, listening to Nuki, that's obviously there's been a misconnect somewhere. Because I, like everybody else, really don't like this, because quite frankly, from our Whakarewa village, our iwi out there, for everybody concerned, really, this is huge. If it's not contained and it's not addressed immediately, and everybody is involved in it. So it does come as a surprise around this table that I'm hearing this, and I'm no doubt Kevin and the team are going to respond to what is actually happening, because we've been working off information that has happened, and it's happened to a number of land trusts and corporations. I've had Wally Lee on the line, everybody on the line banging on this one. So, the reality is, and I don't blame them. It's not blame at all. I'm just saying it should happen. So I'm interested in where we are, and maybe you're going to answer that, Kevin, in your comments. Because I'm operating off a certain template that Lyle and I have been involved in. And it's confusing for us.
We'll just go around. Lyle, do you want to make a comment, or if not, we'll just carry on?
I'll just say a couple of words. In terms of communication, my take is we've been in information overload on this. Sadly, it hasn't filtered through to you and the Hokainga, but I can just say at a political level and within the regional council and our CEO and our chairman made comment too after Councillor Winters, but we've been in communication overload with a whole raft of iwi members from out there, Whakarewa, and Te Taro would be good to cite some of their names. It's hugely political at the moment because, as you know, we're in the middle of a silly season at the moment. So there's a lot of people making a lot of political capital out of this at the moment. But I'm saddened by what you have said. I've taken it on board. And I know Kevin will touch on it in his comments, and no doubt our chairman will mention it to our CEO. But at a personal level, I have been put into information overload on this with regards to the parties that have been connected with. In particularly Hokainga and iwi representatives out of Whakarewa. No, I take on board what you're saying. I'm saddened by your comments and good to see you.
Coming around, Mayor Tapsell, and then we'll come around to the side of the table.
Yeah, thank you. It has been embarrassingly frustrating as well. I've learned about it actually on social media, not email or phone call or text. So I actually take on board Nuki's recommendation. Sorry, I didn't capture it all, but I think it is a very important opportunity for us to just review how we do, how we react to any emergency response or any minor or major disaster that is occurring around our freshwater. I have, just from a Rotorua Lakes Council perspective, asked my Chief Executive and Stavros to send an update to all of our iwi partners, but I appreciate that I only asked that yesterday because I was also concerned that it appeared that the communication hadn't really been out there widely enough for our community to know what's going on.
Well, thank you. So, do you want to make a comment?
Look, just a quick comment, and I think this in a way relates back to the presentation I did this morning, where I mentioned in 2023 how the communities out at Lake Rotorua and Lake Rotorua who felt like there was no connection from council, no information's coming out from either council. And I think we have to be very careful about this breakdown communication that obviously people out there doing their best to do their jobs, but somewhere along the line there's a link gets missed. I've only information I've had about this is social media and reading about in the paper as well. And I wouldn't necessarily expect that I would get a daily update on it. But I think that it is just another one of those indicators. We have to be really careful about making sure we get information out from our organisations to our partners and through our connections into our communities.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Nookie. I don't know the answer to your questions. What I do know is that there's strict protocols and procedures around emergency management response in terms of liaising with iwi and hapu groups. I don't intend to get into a debate whether that's happened here today. That was of no benefit. What I will assure you will do, Chair, I think it's appropriate within the next 2 weeks, we will have an interim report to yourselves as told in terms of the factual steps and the timelines that took place. And we'll make sure that there's a comprehensive report presented to this organisation at your first meeting in the Uteronium. I'm not interested in the social media stuff. What you should be interested in is the facts and the procedures that were followed. And if we can improve on those in the future, right.
I think the other dynamic to mention is one is the iwi, as in Tū Haurangi Ngāti Wāhio, and partner TELT, which is what I'm sort of hearing. So it'd be good if you can get your people to think about those sort of 2 lines as well.
Yeah, well, I'll take your guidance, Chair, in terms of if we prepare an interim report, give it to Toll, whether or not you want to distribute it to the respective iwi and hapu, or you want us to do it at the same time, I'll take your guidance, or staff will take your guidance on that.
Well, I think that it's your clear that you distribute to wherever you think is appropriate, but you can take it probably that TELT is one. And I know that I think the chair of Tū Haurangi Ngāti Wāhio has met with the head of TELT over similar concerns. So there might be just distribute it where you think is appropriate.
And
so the Ngāti Whakaua would be one. Tū Haurangi Ngāti Wāhio. You can take guidance, just to reference that you can take guidance from the chair of TELT. That's the best way. But certainly that TELT gets a copy of the report. Yeah. Kawaii, komatu.
Before we get a response, the one thing, things like rāhui also need to be incorporated as, if it's in your policy, I don't know, but that was a significant concern for us. We want to recognise the bereaved family, and there should have been some immediacy around a rāhui while these matters have been attended to. And that's just normal tikanga, particularly where landowner Māori are concerned, and I'd just like to know if that's part of our, you said that there's a strict emergency response policy. I'd like to know.
Management response.
Yeah, if that's in it, because in this particular situation, I think that's really relevant.
Can I make a comment? Because I understand Regional Council has their guidelines and procedures, and whether they're not followed, that will come out in the report. I think what this kind of highlights for me is an overall strategy, a rapid response comms strategy that might be produced for this group. So any issue that comes, whether it's an oil spill, whether it's a golden clam infestation, anything that requires a rapid response, we have a comms strategy that we've agreed on at this group, that anything that impacts the vision and strategy that we've all adopted needs to be developed. That's what sounds like it's missing.
So emergency response incorporating comms for the 3 parties on any issues to do with the water and the tributaries. That's our
rapid response.
Anything that impacts the strategies of the vision that we've all adopted, developing a rapid response comms strategy. So on top of the guidelines and procedures that regional the councils already have, so that we don't, because this, other things are going to happen. How can we improve?
Well, so we've sort of got our starting of a motion over here, but I'm keen so I'm keen to hear from Kevin just to wrap it all up.
Yep. Can you throw those pictures up, please, Marie? I thought this might come up today, so I asked Ruben Fraser, our GM, to provide you with some factual information today, the latest. And I'll just read out what you can scroll through those as I'm speaking. So at 2:50 a.m, we were advised of a fuel tanker accident The driver suffered a medical event and did not survive. Staff were quickly on site with spill response equipment and have maintained a presence on site throughout the weekend and into this week. Fire and emergency led the initial response, and while our focus has remained on minimising impact to the environment, police are now the lead agency. Actions we have taken to date: spreading absorbent material around the site of the incident to reduce the risk of further diesel spreading on the land. A road sweeper truck later cleaned this up, deploying more than 22 booms at various points down the Koka and putting a stream where access is possible. Ongoing monitoring of those streams and downstream environment for signs of diesel. You'll see in the photos that other actions have been carried out by others, such as excavation of the swale. Compliance staff, here's the key, compliance staff are also working with local iwi, primarily Tūhaurangi and Te Arawa Lakes Trust. Now, if the internal systems within Tūhaurangi and Te Arawa Lakes Trust don't share the information that we give them, how are we to know that that information didn't go out? Because our compliance staff are better to deal with on the ground and tell everybody this is what we're doing and leave the internal comms to those organisations. So compliance staff were working with Tūhaurangi Te Arawa Lakes Trust on this response. Council officers carrying out monitoring have not observed any diesel in the Rotorua area. Take your response, Nuku, that you did. Our understanding is that the truck held 32,000 litres of diesel. Approximately half has been recovered and either decanted or pulled out from the swales. So there's about 16,200 litres unaccounted for, Mr. Chairman. The response has been significant and will be ongoing. Our staff have been involved in the response so far, with cleanup costs around 30K and around 6K worth of equipment. Responses and cleanups costs will be sought from the company involved in terms of reparation, and we have ongoing conversations with the insurers already. Due to the volume of diesel lost and the nature of the environment, we are expecting to be there for a long time. The recovery of the environment will take longer, and managing the expectations of the community is a challenge that will be actively managed. The trucking company have engaged PDP, and I don't know who that is, to carry out ongoing visual ecological monitoring, and we expect to carry this on for several months. Our advice to the public is if you see or smell diesel in these streams, should avoid entering and let us know via the pollution hotline. And have you been through all those slides? Because I didn't see Mirinda. You flick through them. So, Mr. Chairman, we were on site straight away. We advised through our normal protocols, iwi within the area, and I reiterate again, we just do iwi, key points, and that's for those iwi to spread that information far and wide. And if that doesn't happen internally, I'm not sure how we go about it. The last slide I think is pertinent because that's, put that last photo up because that's out at Waipa, and that's out at Waipa, the mountain biking park, and you can see the booms in the stream. We're constantly replacing those, Mr. Chairman, as they absorb the diesel. So my team, they'll be there for a while. And unfortunately, this happened. Take your criticism on board, and as Doug says, we'll do a full assessment of this in a couple of weeks, and hopefully you can get a response. You can get the regional council response along with iwi responses from there. So that's the latest information I have in terms of our response to date. But we will be there for months because this is going to take a long time to filter down the stream. And our staff did say, and I did read that they don't believe it's got into Lake Rotorua. It evaporates, diesel evaporates very quickly. And they haven't seen any sign entering Lake Rotorua yet.
Thanks for the overview. So we've had the concerns been raised. We've had the response. Mayor Tapsell, did you have a comment? And then we'll just round it all up and see where we get to, because there is one point that's been made by Nuki, so we'll capture that shortly. Tania?
Oh, I'm just feeling a little bit annoyed actually, because yeah, I just find it a little bit disrespectful to expect that when you're you lead the control of pollution to expect iwi to have told everyone. I've just checked the Bay of Plenty Facebook page. There's absolutely nothing. And an email is not really sufficient. So I appreciate that they may have sent email, but just really need to look at the ways in which this communication is shared, especially with our wider community as well. So if you could please take that on board back to the comms people at Regional Council, if they could also put something on social media so that when people are seeing videos and photos of the diesel going into their streams, they know what the response is. It shouldn't actually be up to iwi themselves to have to do what probably should be your job.
So hold on. So I think we've had, the points have been made, and I think that it's fair that we just come back to the original kaupapa that Nuki said, and that is the concern. So we know that communication has been identified as a concern. It will be addressed by the report offered by the team, back to say what actually happened according to them, and then there might be an opportunity to be responded to. The key point, I think, here is that, Nuki, can you just go back to the wording that you had with respect to how we might advance forward?
Well, I was moving a motion to recommend councils to review the emergency response processes and structures for incidents related to freshwater around Te Arawa Lakes Trust, like what's happened, and to ensure it aligns with and enabling management to deliver the strategy.
Can I just note for the minutes that, to my knowledge, we got notified by the media, not by the Bay of Plenty Regional Council. And so that breakdown is quite flawed. So I think we need to be really clear that when we're reviewing this protocol, these strict protocols, that there is at least, an exchange between chairs from this board as part of that, as a protocol of participation or information sharing, because our chairman found out through the media, and that's not I think, an appropriate way. It's not mana to mana to do it that way. That's how I think about it. And I disagree too with the suggestion that the obligations are on one party that receives a report to then disseminate it to the hapua niwi. They're actually independent hapu in their own rights. They would have had to organise their own 1,000 people. There should have been a really clear iwi register or hapu register of the interest in that particular area, and all of them notified.
So first thing is, we've got for the minutes, we are having a review, and that review will be presented, as I say, back to this board, and Doug is committed to do that, of the whole situation, setting out timelines, and I hope if we can focus on the communication element, which is clearly an issue, of who spoke to who, if we can get to that sort of point. I think we've got to learn from that, learn from the exercise, and somebody raised around emergency management and how we go about things. Are we able to look towards the development of some sort of whole outcome protocol, rapid response comm strategy, that if we ask our three partners to come together through the CEOs to organise a combined rapid response comm strategy moving forward from here, just to pick up, so we actually do something with the court. Is that a possibility? I know there first, give you a bit of time to think about it, Doug.
Totally support that, the comments you made about the comm strategy, Mr. Chair. One thing that I found satisfying in a difficult situation is things are being done on site. If what we're seeing is holding true, something's being done about it immediately. So that's really important. But for the learning experience here is the communications. And how do we get better at doing that? And how do we actually embrace everybody on the same page in that space? But like I said, I'll repeat again, what I've seen and getting it cleaned up is a priority. So that Nuki doesn't have to worry that nothing's been done, sitting there waiting for the diesel to come downstream. At least there's some issues some strategies and some action being put in place. Yeah. So this doesn't justify the fact that communication can be better, but at least there's a sense of satisfaction in it.
Once well, mate, that Points well made that things have been done, and there's a mitigation, things are happening. The fallback is the issue about communication seems to be at the heart of it. So we can find out about the report. In the meantime, however, it's just asking, and I think it's something like this, that the officials of each of our parties to this group are asked to get together and present a combined response rapid response communication strategy and provide that back to this board at the beginning of next year or whenever the first meeting comes up.
But I respectfully suggest that that's essentially what Nuki's been asking for, is that lie on the table until such time as you've had the initial response I assured you'd get, and then the fuller report comes back to this organisation, and at that time, if you're unhappy with some of the procedures and protocols, that's the time to say, well, we want to review, can you bring it back in terms of an agreed protocol going forward? I just think we're going to be careful that we don't do a whole lot of work without the benefit of, as Kevin said, that's probably not the full dialogue in terms of the steps that took place. It's just my suggestion.
I think there's no doubt that steps took place. The question is about the involvement of iwi and iwi and TELT. But there were, Nuki, you were moving the motion. Doug has asked you to respectfully withhold that motion until such time as the report comes back. So the onus is, do you want to stay with it, or do you want to, in other words, let it lie?
No, absolutely, stay with it.
So it's a live motion. Okay. So we need to have a live motion on the table, I think, in that case, and I think we'll type it up to get on the board so everybody knows what's quite important.
Can I make a comment around it? Because I think despite whatever the report comes back with, there's an assumption that TOLT will go out and communicate with our iwi and hapu. And as mentioned by Annette, it can't sit with us all the time. There has been previous things like the Golden Plan where we have gone above and beyond. We've had sleepless nights. It just falls on our current staff to go out and organise hui iwi. We organise community hall engagement, and so there's going to be ongoing issues that come up, and we need to have thought out strategy with resource on what that looks like. So despite what's happening with the oil spill and things like that, I do think there's a need for that regardless.
That's fine. What Nuki raised was what I refer to as the emergency management response. Your issue is a wider communication in terms of communications in response to a whole lot of other issues as well.
That impact our wind also.
Yeah.
Well, long and short of it is, it is going to be on the live motion as soon as we get it typed up. So there's nothing else seems to be from Lyle.
Anything else?
Just very quickly, because I'm not even on this committee, I should be listening, but I know there's some work being commissioned that'll come to you in the next 2 weeks, but I think in the meantime, I think our Chief Executive Fiona could make a phone call to you or officially to Nuku or whatever, and just say, who was advised and when. I think that material we understand is available as to what individuals were communicated. But that can be done,
We'll leave that off the agenda, but we'll just ask if you can get Fiona to contact Wallace. Okay, that'd be the quickest. Nuki, you okay with that? That Fiona contacts Wallace to talk about the back comms.
Yep, and I'm happy to be involved in.
All right, so there's nothing else to receive from your report. So while Fiona's picking up our motion.
The whole total, we got two other issues, I don't know. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, can I thought, okay. We want to make our position on the Ōhau wall really clear. Te Arawa Lakes Trust position is that the 50 million required to repair the wall is best allocated to land use change options, which is consistent with some of the audit all that we've had this today, and improving the lake water quality in these catchments.
Are you speaking on behalf of Pikiao or TOLT?
TOLT. This is the TOLT. This was our resolution yesterday.
Thank you. Okay. It's all right.
Okay. But Te Arawa, just on that too, we are meeting with Pikiao to ensure that we are aligning so that there is ongoing collaboration between us and Pikiao. The gain from the repair to the wall is 0.3 TLI. It is the TOLT view that reducing the TLI in Rotorua and Rotorua at the source will reduce the need for the wall in the future. This is our formal position as resolved by the board. We would ask that you note that. We support the ongoing investment in improving lake water quality in Lake Rotorua through land use change initiatives and not investment in the Ōhau wall. I can give you that if you like it, but I've been asked to convey that. Do you want to do the next one? We've got 3 matters that we have to. Okay.
Sorry, can I just say, Mr. Chairman, just in terms of process, because the Ōhau wall wasn't on our agenda, I'm happy to receive that advice, Annette, but we can't vote on it today. So this group is receiving that advice. That's all we're doing.
That's all we're doing. I'm instructed to do that. No, Nikki would normally do that. She's not here today.
I'm just making sure we've got the process right, Mr. Chair.
All it is straight information. That's it, just so everybody knows the state position. Second, let's move us on.
And it's an interrelated issue, the nutrient reduction program, Lake Rotorua and the purchase land blocks. In principle, as per our comments relating to the Ōhau wall, is to see land use change and nutrient reduction efforts at the source. We do, however, want to be engaged in all discussions and decisions related to the programs and the opportunities to participate in review processes of any program to ensure the best use and application of allocated funds. These funds to be distributed as a result of our Settlement Act and to enable the shared participation role and design in the restoration of our lakes. This is just us making sure our formal positions are noted.
And just for the record, the money that we are using to purchase farmland, it's new money from the regional council. It's nothing to do with trustee. It is funds. We'll essentially borrow the money, Mr. Chairman, to buy these farmlands. So, and that's what Doug talked about as a recycling of the capital. One. So it's not linked to the deed of funding from the Crown, and it's linked to the nitrogen fund, because we'll take that farmland, we'll buy the nitrogen off that farmland, and then that's how we fund the capital purchase of those funds.
All that was just a straight statement of the position of the hotel.
You want to be involved? Happy to have you on board.
Don't look at me, okay? The entity wants to be involved, okay? I'm just,
This is a big decision for regional council, Mr. Chairman, to start buying land for this. This hasn't been done before in terms of land use change. We purchase land for different reasons, be it a wetland or something like that. But yeah, this is the first time we're looking at buying a dairy farm.
Come on, is there any more from there, because I'm just conscious of time? Anything else to come through?
Last point just is, and I think we've kept it in our discussion, but I want to be faithful to Nikki, who's not here. There are a range of attributes monitored to demonstrate progress, and we want to have more information about how those measures are determined and how they are likely to impact, so an anticipatory of what they will do. TOLT has a fully operational team that can design and deliver measures that align with the strategy and have a monitoring regime and workforce in place to implement those, and want to participate in the strategy and its implementation at all levels: governance, policy development and practical delivery. There is an expectation at this table and across our community that Te Arawa are leading in this space and being present on these issues. So we just like to note that.
I'll just add those to the minutes. They're important statements, but at least they set out the position. And therefore, I think that's the end of the TELT report. I'm just aware that we have 2 more reports, one from the Ministry of Environment and also one from the Lakes Council. So I just want to make sure that we cover off the rest of the other items are relatively small, so I want to give time to those. But I appreciate that we've been open and frank about the discussion just had, and that we had listening ear and an opportunity to respond back from both parties. So, ka nui te mihi kia tātou, me te tangia noho ki te rao ngā mate. So if I can say that Nuki's going to move, that the report be that the Rotorua Lakes, no, not that one.
Take it, Mr. Chair, since the chair's gone, I'm an alternate. So
I'll just get this one out of the way. Nuki's moved and it's second that the Te Arawa Lakes Trust verbal update be moved. All those in favour say aye. Against?
Received.
Received. Carried.
Nuki and?
Nuki and
Tare.
Tara. All right, then we're moving on now to, and thanks for the input on the corridor. Very important that we put that on the
Sorry, Chair, I
table.
just want to check those 4 points that I've just raised. We receive them? That's
Yes,
part of the.
yeah, simply receive them.
It's receiving them. And we've taken, I've taken note of them, Brenda.
Wait on. Okay, the updates, Rotorua Lakes Council updates. Davos, oh, yes.
Mr. Chair, in the interest of time, I'll take the report as read and happy to start on the behalf of the report.
Thank you very much.
So we have got the report and you've got the report update we received. That's the motion. That you've given us some information about the sewage scheme, the other bits of water waste treatment. Or just as Stavros has indicated, are there any questions with respect to those issues because they're an update? Kevin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Stavros, Lake Tarawera sewage. Stage 1 finished, completed pumping water. Stage 2 is now connecting in. I've heard that, so the question is, has District Lakes Council sorted the resource consent for earthworks in the Lakes A zone? Have you got that sorted in terms of your district plan?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Winter. I think, as you said, stage 1 is completed now, and mission will have about 20% of the property systems, installed. About 87 properties installed. You're quite right. Because of Lake Zone A resource consent and building consent required for each one of the installations. The resource consent is required, to ask some key questions: the depth of the, excavated granite pump, the backfilling of the septic tanks, any impacts on slopes and things like that. For every property we are undertaking the installation, a checklist is done against it, and to date, as a rough indication from the 87 installations, only about 3 of them require some more detailed resource consent. The rest, 3 of them. The rest of them are, it's just they are what we call minor effects, on the property. So an 87, BB permitted activities given to them. But we are progressing through as we go.
Good to hear.
Any other questions on the report?
Yeah, I'd just like a little bit more information. What are the strategies at page 90 you're looking at the Tompkins Wake for those landowners at Rotorua and Rotorua that have opted out? And who are the resource consent mandated iwi liaison group that you're referring to there? And is Te Arawa Lakes Trust part of that?
There are 3 questions there. The strategy, as you know, in Lake Rotoiti, East Rotoiti and Rotorua, about 90% of the installations on property installations have been completed. It's about 63 properties that have not been completed at the moment. 13 of them are private, individual, property owners for which the council is initiating enforcement action against them. The other 50 are multiple Maori properties, and we're going through a Maori land court to identify the representative, owners. Now, so those, once we identify the representative owners or the authorized owners of these multiple whenua, Maori, we'll be talking to the, to those people for the installation. The third question I think you asked is that who is the iwi liaison group? As you're Ngāti Pikiao, Anatanje.
I'm very much Ngāti Pikiao, Ngāti Mākino, and I can also whakapapa to Ngāti Whakaue. I'm here today at the Arawa Lakes Trust.
Okay, but the iwi liaison group, as you know, the resource consent for the treatment plant in Rotoiti has mandated the formation of the iwi liaison group, comprising, as a matter of the heads of agreement with here, and that group meets with us officers every quarter and to review the operational
Does it affect Arawa Lakes Trust and its membership?
Not all lakes are not members. They are representatives of Ngāti Piki Environmental Society.
Okay. The second matter that I want to raise is for the multiple owned lands. If you put pipes in there without their consent, have you taken a legal opinion on the risk of that?
Well, that's what I'm saying. We are going through the Maori codes to identify who the mandated representatives to give consent to that. So we haven't done that yet.
But where pipes have been put in on multiple, and there's a number of Māori roadways where pipes have been put in. So there's a prima facie case, I think, for trespass on those lands because you haven't formalised the position in the Māori Land Court. Is there a risk paper on that?
I'm not aware of any of these issues that our EU liaison group, and the multiple Māoris have raised with us. So if you have any particular situation like that, I'd be happy to receive it.
Yeah, I just think that there's some real risks. I think I've been at several meetings, and so has Piki, and there's a lot of general discussion about we're going to the Māori Land Court and we'll rectify the consent issues around landowners agreeing to pipes to be laid in their land. But I know of at least 2 private roads, Māori land roads, which already happened, and there's been no effort to do that.
As I said, I am not aware of the situations. Happy to get information, and I will liaise with our cultural impact and monitoring team, which are part of the Ngāti Piki liaison group, to identify those areas and see what can be done. To the best of my knowledge, we don't put infrastructure unless we have the authorization or the consent of the authorized representatives of multiple, Māori.
I think you're lucky in the case that NH just signalled a risk that might need to be investigated by the council, and it's nothing there. There's nothing there.
Yeah, well, we can investigate that, but as I said, I'm not aware of the cases. You have in mind.
So any more questions of Stavros? By the way, I noticed that a couple of people picking up. We were scheduled apparently to go to 1:30. We're on time. We will finish before 1:30. We're almost there, in fact. That was right on time. Thank you very much. So thank you very much. We'll just so somebody like to move that Stavros report be presented as presented. Thank you very much. Well, I'm happy to second. All those in favour say.
Sorry, Mr.
I'm allowed.
You independent.
Okay, shall I pen? Yeah, thank you. Kevin, all those in favour, keep my eye. Against, carried. Thank you, Stavros. Thank you. And now I think we're going to you, Lorena. Is it you going to be talking to us?
It is. Kia ora tātou. And this will be very brief because there's not really a lot to update, and some of what I'm sharing I think has already been shared by previous presenters. So really it's just and first of all, apologies for not getting it in written, and we will look to do that next time, just to make sure you've got it documented in front of you. But all I wanted to do is convey that the second RMA amendment bill has been passed into law. We're still working towards full replacement of the RMA, which will be introduced to Parliament this year and then passed into law next year. The 5 areas of the bill are primarily looking at infrastructure and energy, housing, farming and primary sector, emergency and natural hazards, and system changes. And some of what Gemma alluded to in terms of some of the key changes that have happened with the amendment bill is around halting council plans and policy development, except where exemptions apply, and that's until the end of 2027. If councils are required to withdraw plan reviews and changes that haven't started hearings within 90 days of the bills being enacted. So there is a requirement to halt that. There are some regulation making powers. A new ministerial regulation making power will show the modification or removal of RMA policy or plan provisions that hinder development capacity, particularly around housing, affordability or economic growth. But this does include safeguards to protect treaty settlement obligations and ensure transparency. There are changes to discharge rules. The bill broadens what water discharges can be allowed as a permitted activity, provided councils can show that the water quality will improve over time. Council's ability to review marine farm consent conditions will also be constrained until September 2030. The freshwater farm plan. So the resource management consenting and other system changes amendment bill proposes increasing the thresholds for a freshwater farm plan where a freshwater farm plan is required. It also recommended removing the certification requirement for lower risk land use, with a higher focus, particularly where there is an farming intensification, or where catchments where farming poses a risk. Farm operators could still have a freshwater farm plan certified voluntary, and there is an opportunity for industry organisations where they can apply to the Minister for the Environment to be allowed to provide certification and auditing services to those members. And probably the other update that I just wanted to share is around the climate adaptation, and this builds off a report that an independent reference group published on 9th of June. I think it would be a good review based on what they're proposing for changes, which are currently being considered. It's not government policy, but they are being considered. The group's recommendations are considered alongside other findings of last year's cross-party adaptation inquiry and other advice, and decisions will be made in due course. But there are some considerations based on the presentation from the climate change working group that I think would merit having a look at based on what's come through from that. And then the only other thing I really wanted to mention was really just on what Doug had talked about, work that's continuing around the voluntary nature credits market. The ministry is actually, the ministry is looking at what their role might be and to support a market-led approach to this. And we are doing pilots with several groups to inform what that setting might look like, with the view that there'll be a report back in March next year. So there are already some groups that are already working voluntary in this space. So we're just trying to work through how can the government support that. And that was all I really wanted to say. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Look, there's a lot of information that you've just shared. I think it's appropriate that we do get a written report, because there's, like I say, just banging.
It's a standing item. Nikki wants it as a standing item.
Oh.
The report to be written.
Oh, yeah, no. So, yeah, I think there is an expectation that the report is written. You've acknowledged that, so that's good point. I think just for the purposes of today's today's information, there's a lot of crucial information in there, and I'd ask if you could that either using your notes or otherwise, that information is shared with Mirinda.
Yes, no, the team is sending through a written report of what I've just provided.
If I could, so just for the minutes, that verbal report be presented in writing to the secretary, and that by the end of this month, that's 5 or 8 days away, and it's circulated to all members. Yeah, just so that's on record and people get it. There's a lot of information there, and so unless there's some burning questions.
Just one question: can you itemise in that report who the voluntary pilots are for the carbon credit substitution regime that you were talking about?
I can't off the top of my head, but perhaps I can include it in the written report. I just need to check back, just because some of them are commercial entities, and so who are working with us in a voluntary capacity. So we may need to just qualify that. But yes, Annette, we can see what we can do about that.
Identify them, the quantum, just the cost.
Kapai.
Anybody else? Any questions? Kapai, thank you for sticking with us. It might be that the next time we might put these reports up front, just to save you being online for actually you're party to it anyway, so you're stuck with it. Sorry about that. So thanks, Rona. Thanks very much, Kanuta. Appreciate that. And now, so that takes us then, better receive the report. Nuki will move, and Tony will second that we accept the report from the Ministry of the Environment. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Move to the excluded section of the report now. Those minutes have been circulated, and unless there's any matters arising, then I'll take it that we can confirm the minutes.
Happy to confirm the minutes, Mr. Chairman, but there was a response from RDC on the day, a tabled document to the report. And I'm just wondering if we can include that in the minutes as well, future reference. I'm not sure. I think, can we do that, Miranda?
Yes, it was circulated.
It was circulated, but can we put it at the bottom of the minutes? This was RDC's response to the QDESCO report.
Well, it was presented as a matter of record, I suppose. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That's point. Yeah, no, that's fine.
Thank you. That's all.
All right, so we'll just accept that the minutes for the in committee or public excluded, I think it is, confirmed that the Rotorua Arawa Lake Strategy Group minutes 30 June of true and correct. We've done that, haven't we?
Need to confirm those minutes. I need them.
Confirm the minutes. So I think you were there, Kevin.
Yep.
And Te Tari was there, just because you're both here now. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. We did have the opportunity to talk to the oil spill, Kevin. We've dealt with that.
That was it.
And I think that's the end of our agenda. Boom.
Done.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for your time. Appreciate all of our officials being in. And also